Chapter 981 Action. Around 10 kilometers away, Luo Leng and Ziyi were on top of a hill looking down on the Grand Manor below them. It'll be a tough fight, be careful later. Luo Leng turned to look at Ziyi. He was very worried about Ziyi, as his lightning domain was not very stable yet. He was afraid that he would stumble during important moments. Ziyi smiled brightly. Don't worry. I won't drag you down. He looked at the calm and quiet manor. There seemed to be no one inside, but in actual fact, there were many guards hidden inside it. Furthermore, there were also 2 domain realm masters. If they wanted to complete the mission boss gave them, they must take care of a domain realm master each. That's good. Let's go. The moment Luo Leng finished speaking, they disappeared. Around 5 kilometers away from the luxury street of the Chaotic Lands, Liu Furong and Zhao Jun squatted on the roof of an office building. They were analyzing the positions of the people below them. Zhao Jun, our biggest hurdle is the 2 domain realm masters inside the building. I'm the only domain realm masters among us. If they stop us, we're dead, Liu Furong said seriously. Zhao Jun nodded. From the moment they received the order, he knew that they would have to face this difficulty. They could ask for Qilong's help, but they were worried that without him, the people in the base might meet some trouble. Zhao Jun and Liu Furong were paranoid now, so much so that they didn't dare to move Qilong away from the base. How about this? I'll lure one domain realm master out so that you can defeat the other one alone. Then, you can come and help me. Zhao Jun thought for a moment and came up with his plan. However, he would be putting himself at risk. If he made a mistake, he might even die. Liu Furong said sternly. Zhao Jun, it's too dangerous. If we don't do this, we won't have a chance against them unless we ask for Qilong's help. Zhao Jun said firmly. Everyone was able to break through to the domain stage in times of crisis. I can do it too. Zhao Jun always wanted to find an opportunity to enter the domain stage, and he felt that this might be his chance to find it. Zhao Jun. Liu Furong was a little angry. He said, advancing in times of crisis is not as simple as you think. It's like taking a walk on the brink of death. Don't act rashly. He managed to advance this way too, but his opponent was their regiment commander. He stopped pressuring him when he was advancing. However, their enemies wouldn't do that. They would strike when you're at your weakest. This was why almost no one managed to enter the domain stage this way. No one was stupid enough to wait for their opponent to enter the domain stage before killing him. I know, Uncle Liu. I won't act rashly. Zhao Jun knew that Liu Furong was worried about him, so he said after much thought, but we should still follow my plan. I'll definitely wait for you. Liu Furong looked at Zhao Jun's resolve gaze. He knew he couldn't reject his plan anymore. He lowered his head and thought for a moment. Then, he said, fine, we'll follow your plan. However, we must kill all those small fries first so that you don't have to worry about them when you lure the domain realm master out. These people were of no threat to him and Zhao Jun. However, they would be a burden if they attacked Zhao Jun when he was fighting with the domain realm master. They might even kill Zhao Jun when he was distracted with the domain realm master, and Liu Furong wouldn't allow such things to happen. We'll kill these people first. If the 2 domain realm masters appear, don't care about them unless we've killed all the other people. I'll block them and wait for you to kill all the small fries. Then, we'll carry on with the plan. I understand. Zhao Jun nodded. The 2 of them finished their discussion. They entered the building through the safety passage. A bloody battle commenced. Bang! The sound of something slamming on the wall was heard. A blue water dragon and a sharp knife attacked Li Lang from his sides. Li Lang reacted quickly. He raised his arms and blocked the 2 attacks. The collision of the 3 huge forces destroyed all the dilapidated houses around them. Li Lang looked as if he was using his arms to block the attack, but the fat man and the skinny man could see an energy shield that was shining with a black light on his arms. The black energy started creeping towards them through the water dragon and the knife. The 2 elders remembered the frightening black light ray just now, so they immediately stopped their attack and dropped their control over their weapons. The water dragon and the sharp knife, which had already left their hands, turned into particles. Damn it, we can't touch him. If not, we'll disappear The fat man shouted angrily. Does this mean that we have to be on the passive side? On the other hand, Li Lan secretly heaved a sigh of relief. The first sneak attack he made caused his opponents to be scared of him, so they didn't dare to take any risk. If they had used their domain energy to battle with him, he needed to exceed their domain energy with his own to win against them. If not, he would be suppressed by them and might even receive a backlash from his domain power. I don't believe that his domain energy is limitless. Malicious intent appeared in the skinny man's eyes. Everyone, attack! When the houses collapsed, everyone in the surrounding got alerted. They hadn't been killed by Little White or Li Lan, so they hurried over to the sound of the explosion. When this order was given, more than 20 men flew in from different directions. They all had weapons in their hands as they pounced towards Li Lan. Little White. Li Lan was not afraid of these small characters, but there were still 2 domain realm masters eyeing him. He didn't want to waste his domain energy, so he called Little White. The sun disappeared and the entire sky turned dark. A huge object suddenly dropped from the sky. Li Lan's expression changed. He turned into particles and ran away. Bang! The ground vibrated. The entire village was flattened by the huge meteor-like thing, and everyone in the village was also squashed into minced meat. Chapter 982 And the Relationship. Cough. Little White, are you trying to kill me? Li Lan congregated his body beside Little White. While doing so, he accidentally inhaled some dust and started coughing. Roar. Aren't you the one who called for me? Little White was furious. If Li Lan didn't call it, it wouldn't have changed into its real form. Originally, it was a little far from the village, so it even changed back to its true form for it to move to the village at the highest possible speed to help him. Yet, this ungrateful bastard complained about it. HMPH. Little White is angry. I want to break ties with this person. Do you want to expose your master's identity? Your true form is already registered in the military's data. Hurry up and change back. Li Lan patted Little White's butt agitatedly as he reminded it to change back before the dust subsided. Roar. Little White hugged its head and groaned. I forgot about it. Oh no, I am going to be killed by Master again. Little White started shivering in fear. A loud poof was heard and it had changed back to its mini size. It quickly jumped into Li Lan's arms and started trembling in fear. It's good to be alive. I don't want to die. Master, please forgive me. It's all right. I'll help you. Li Lan patted Little White's round head and smiled. Little White looked up with its watery big eyes. It looked at Li Lan pleadingly. It had forgotten about breaking ties with him now. However, you owe me a favor. Li Lan gave a cunning smile. Poor Little White. It didn't know Li Lan's true intention and thought that he was really trying to help it, as it nodded fervently to Li Lan's condition. The dust in the air subsided and 2 human figures suddenly appeared in front of Li Lan. They were the fat and skinny old men who had managed to escape Little White's attack too. They looked around and saw the ruins of their former base. Besides some lucky people who managed to survive, most were dead. They felt their heart aching in pain. They took many years to build up this village. Now, everything was destroyed. All their efforts had all gone down the drain. The fat man looked up with bloodshot eyes. His eyes were burning with hatred. Bastard, I must kill you. If they didn't kill this person, they would be strangled by Hades when they go back. Hades didn't need people who would leave problems for his organization. They knew what their fate was if they leave. So they instantly rushed towards Li Lan without any hesitation while putting aside all their fears. If he didn't die, they would die. They had no paths of retreat, so they were going all in on this one gamble. Li Lan picked up Little White and threw it at the fat man. The fat old man was a water element domain realm master. Water was an element that was very hard to detect, so just by the virtue of his element, it made much harder to deal with than the skinny man who was a metal element domain realm master. Hence, Li Lan decisively put Little White in charge of the fat man. Another factor that he had considered when making this decision was the metal element causing more harm to Little White compared to water element. After all, Little White used to live underwater on planet Juhao. Hence, Li Lan made the decision that would make use of their strength the most. Roar. Bastard. Why are you throwing me again? Little White was angry. This was the second time he threw it without informing it. Bang! Little White's fat body slammed into the fat man's stomach. The fat man took 2 steps back because of the force behind throw. Little White bounced back onto the ground and rolled out for a few meters due to the residual force. Little White struggled to get up and its head was spinning. It couldn't stand up properly too. This was the second time it got dizzy. Little White shook its head and forced itself to remain focused. Then, it turned around and looked at Li Lang, who was fighting with the skinny man. It roared a few times at Li Lang's direction. It even raised one small tentacle at Li Lang as though it was pointing a middle finger at him. The fat man disregarded Little White. He thought that Li Lang threw it at him to distract him so that he could kill the skinny man. Hence, after he stabilized his body, he rushed towards Li Lang with the intention to sneak behind him. Little White hated Li Lang for throwing him, but it didn't want him to get hurt too. Thus, it leaped into the air and bumped into the fat man to force him back. Roar! Your opponent is me. Little White raised a tentacle and curled it inwards multiple times. The fat man saw Little White's actions. He narrowed his eyes and his expression turned serious. He remembered how he got forced back twice. The first time, it might be due to the young man's strength, but the second time, this little thing blocked him all by itself. If he wanted to fight with his partner, he must destroy this little thing first. Killing intent appeared in the fat man's eyes and 4 water dragons manifested in the air above him. They flew towards Little White from all 4 directions. The 4 water dragons blocked all paths of escape for Little White. Roar! Little White shouted before being drowned by the 4 water dragons. The 4 water dragons flew around Little White and formed a huge water ball, trapping Little White inside it. Little White started struggling in the water ball. The fat man clenched his fist tightly so that the water ball wouldn't be broken by the little thing. Little White's resistance gradually got weaker. Finally, it stopped moving. It seemed to have drowned in the water ball. 3 minutes later, the fat man sneered. He released his grip and the water ball dropped to the ground. Little White laid there motionless. It really seemed to be dead. The fat man finished Little White and turned to look at the skinny man's fight. He saw Li Lang and the skinny man both using their ultimate technique. Li Lang activated his format territory and the space around him started to get all distorted. There was a frightening black whirlpool in the middle, seemingly to be devouring everything within the space. Li Lang had a black scythe in one hand. Along with his black cloak, he looked like the god of death. The skinny man had a weapon in his hand too. It was a blue dragon sun moon knife. The blade and the handle of the knife were both long. It looked like it could slash anything into 2. His domain was like his knife too. It was sharp knife aura that was able to penetrate anything. There were a few knife scars on the ground in front of him. The fat man knew that this was a good time to sneak attack when he saw Li Lang being occupied by the skinny man's domain. He placed a hand behind his back and a thin stream of water started to congregate in his palm. The stream of water slowly got wider and wider. Finally, it turned into a giant dragon that was able to swallow anything. Li Lang and the skinny man had reached the height of their fight. They suddenly attacked at the same time. This is the perfect opportunity. The fat man's eyes lit up. Li Lang wouldn't have the energy to handle another person's attack now. The fat man raised his hand, but he suddenly felt a pain in his chest. He looked down at his chest with a flabbergasted expression. He saw a huge tentacle coming out from his chest with blood gushing out in masses. Chapter 983 Goddessly. The fat man slowly turned his head. He saw the little white ball which he thought was dead, smiling brightly and laughing at him. That tentacle belonged to it. Its tentacles were emerging from its body in a strange manner. What kind of savage beast is this? The fat man was extremely puzzled. To break the defensive barrier around his body easily, it was definitely not a normal pet. Roar! The tentacles retracted into the round ball's body. There were no signs of its existence anymore. Little White resumed its innocent and cute image. A huge hole the size of a bowl appeared in the fat man's chest. Blood flowed out of it. He felt that his life was flowing out of his body. He felt cold. After ruling the underground world for more than 10 years, he died in the hands of an unknown and innocent-looking creature. He felt so frustrated. His death didn't seem justified at all. The fat man sneered as he laughed at himself. The years of peace made him forget that harmless-looking things were the most dangerous. He finally paid the price for his carelessness. Bang! The old man finally took his last breath and fell on the ground. His body made a loud sound when it slammed on the ground. This sound shocked the skinny man who was fighting with Li Lang. From the corner of his eyes, he noticed that his partner was dead. He got distracted. This is my chance. Li Lang immediately wielded his death scythe. The skinny man felt a frightening force rushing towards him. He was dumbstruck by the fat man's death, but he had to forget about it for now. He took on Li Lang's attack with all his concentration. The skinny man decisively slashed his Blue Dragon Sun Moon knife at his opponent's scythe. The strong would always win. He couldn't hold back now. If he lost, he would disappear like a piece of meat from his body. He didn't want to die, so he must fight for his life. Bang! The two weapons collided and the battle of the two domain energies started. Everything around them was destroyed by their energies. Those places that got touched by the black whirlpool turned into small particles and disappeared. Those that got slashed by the knife aura shattered into pieces and dispersed into the air. In front of these two powerful domain energy, Little White had no choice but to hide too. It used its tentacles to dig the soil hurriedly and buried itself underground. After experiencing many disasters and dangerous situations on planet Johao, Little White's survivability was very strong. Even underground, it was able to move around freely without any difficulty. The result of this battle was a tie. The skinny man was elated when he realized his opponent's special domain was not invincible. As long as he was on par with him, his opponent wouldn't be able to hurt him. Suddenly, he felt a strong sense of danger creeping up behind him. He slashed his knife behind him instantly. Roar! A shrill sound rang beside his ears. The sound wave penetrated his skull and into his brain, causing him to feel disorientated. Damn it! The skinny man retreated back quickly, but it was too late. His spiritual power got disturbed by the sound waves, so his domain energy was affected too. While he was disoriented, the Blue Dragon Sun Moon knife got invaded with Li Lang's format domain. It exploded and disappeared. Li Lang didn't stop there. His scythe flew out of his right hand. A metal chain was bound to the staff of the scythe. The scythe flew towards the skinny man who was trying to run away. Bang! The skinny man congregated his energy and formed another knife. He held the handle with both hands and forced himself to resist Li Lang's incoming fatal attack. The huge force behind the throw caused him to be pushed back a few meters. Deep and long skid marks were left on the ground. The skinny man vomited a mouthful of blood. His hands started shaking and blood was leaking out of his burst blood vessel. His stubborn resistance caused him to be on the losing end in this battle. Li Lang shook his hand. The metal chains clanged loudly and the scythe swept towards the skinny man once again. But this time, it was more powerful. Die! The injured skinny man was furious and his viciousness got ignited. He shouted loudly and slashed his long knife at the scythe. The long knife slit a deep cut in the ground. Li Lang knew that his opponent was fighting with his life now. He grunted and the black whirlpool started spinning even faster. His black cloak flew up in the wind. A ray of black light suddenly shot out from his forehead and through his mask. The ray of black light caused his metal mask to disintegrate slowly from the top. Li Lang's perfect face was revealed to the skinny man. He was surprisingly familiar with this face. Goddess Li? The skinny man was dumbfounded. The dream lover of all the men in the world was a domain realm master. Li Lang's gaze turned cold. He felt humiliated by this greeting. Because of his rage, the ray of black light got more intense. Soon, the light flowed towards the scythe through the chain in his hand. The scythe and the knife collided again. Ah! The skinny man screamed in agony. He saw his knife disintegrating in his hand. Slowly, his body started disappearing too. The domain energy came too quickly and fiercely. His body was engulfed by it in an instant. The skinny man didn't even finish his scream before he disappeared totally. Roar! Goddess Li! Ha ha ha! Little White had climbed out of the ground. It covered its mouth with its tentacles and sniggered. Little White, do you want your master to know that you've exposed his identity? Li Lang raised his pretty eyes as he warned Little White calmly. Little White got frightened. It hurriedly covered its mouth with more tentacles and shook its head fervently. Sob. Why did I forget that this ladyboy knew my weakness? Leland waved at Little White when it stopped laughing at him. Little White jumped into Leland's arms immediately. It saw Leland's beautiful face accidentally. Well, it feels good to be hugged by a beauty. Little White laid comfortably in Leland's arms lazily. In the past, Little White liked to lie in Leland's arms because Leland would massage it. However, now, even if Leland tortured it, it wouldn't want to leave. That beautiful face was enough to lift his mood and perk up his appetite. It had to be said that the pet picks up after its master. Ling Lan was a fan of good looks, she just hid it well, so her pet couldn't resist beauty too. Chapter 984 No Reason to Live. Leland looked at the mess Little White created and frowned. Roar, what's wrong? Little White wondered. It didn't want to see a beauty frowning. If it looked at a frowning Leland too much, its mood would be affected negatively. I'm thinking if those kidnapped children are squashed by you too. Leland felt his head hurting. Rabbit wouldn't scold him if he found out, but he would think that he acted recklessly. Leland didn't want to leave a bad impression on Ling Lan. Roar. Don't worry, I calculated my landing speed so the rooms underground are still intact. Little White explained itself hurriedly. If you're worried, I can bring them out. Little White decided to volunteer to help when it saw Leland continued frowning. How are you going to bring them out? Leland smiled ambiguously at Little White. Little White got enchanted by the smile. It felt a little dizzy as it replied without thinking, I can swallow them in my stomach. Idiot. If you swallow them, they'll suffocate. Leland glared at Little White as it blamed it for thinking of stupid ideas, as expected of a beauty. No matter what he did, he was still beautiful. Even a glare seemed so mesmerizing. Little White felt his nose getting warm. Blood was going to flow out of its nostrils. It quickly stuck two tentacles in its nose. However, that was all that remained of his consciousness. The words he said revealed all his secrets. They won't suffocate. I can swallow the space around them too. Little White finally realized what it said, so it quickly used its remaining tentacles to cover its mouth. I got distracted by his beauty. Little White knocked its head furiously with its tentacles. However, it was too late. It had exposed its secret. Oh, Little White, you have a lot of secrets. Leland smiled and patted Little White's head. Little White's mind worked furiously. In the end, it laid down and pretended to be dead. I didn't say that just now. I didn't. Leland chuckled when he saw Little White pretending to be dead again. His smile was enough to make people forget everything else. A beauty among the ruins, lonely and isolated from the world. The only thing that saw this beautiful scenery was a dazed pet. Leland hugged Little White and left. He didn't forget to clear the corpse before leaving. After some time, Little White remembered something. It roared anxiously. We haven't saved those children. That's not our problem, Leland replied indifferently. Roar. Roar? When did Leland wear his mask? Little White held its head in disbelief. I am unable to see the beautiful face anymore. No. Roar, where did you hide your mask? Little White searched through Leland's clothes furiously. I must find the mask. Damn it. I must destroy all the masks that will cover up the beautiful face. If I can't see the beautiful face, I'll be in a bad mood. I won't be able to eat well. Are you looking for the mask? Leland raised his eyebrows. Roar. Yes, Little White nodded fervently. I must find the masks and destroy them so that he wouldn't be able to wear it. That way, I will always be able to look at a beauty. Leland smiled gently and black light appeared on his hand. Soon, the light congregated into a mask. I'm able to format things and also congregate particles into items I want. Little White finally understood that the mask Leland was wearing was not a real metal mask. It was just an illusion created using his domain. Only people who were more powerful than him was able to see through it. Little White wanted to destroy Leland's mask, but it remembered his sinister domain energy. It was powerful, but it was still afraid of his format domain. It didn't want to disappear just yet. Little White was in a dilemma. Should I choose my personal safety or eye candy? In the end, It chose its personal safety. It laid on Li Lang's arm lifelessly. It had no reason to live anymore. On this side, Li Lang completed Ling Lan's mission. On the other end, Luo Lang and Ziyi just managed to enter the depth of the manor. The two of them killed the last batch of guards. After that, they felt two powerful energy moving towards them. Luo Lang and Ziyi cooperated well. Each of them chose to block one energy. Boom, boom. Two loud explosions were heard. The sneak attack from the two people got stopped by Luo Lang and Ziyi. They retreated a few steps from the force. Two sage-like old men appeared in front of them. One was in a green gown while the other was in a gray gown. Both of them had white hair. They were more than 100 years old. They looked at the ground filled with corpses and frowned. The elder in green gown glared at them and coldly said, "You two youngsters are quite vicious." Ziyi smiled. "Not as vicious as you. How dare you refute when you killed so many people?" The elder in the gray gown scoffed. "We killed people who deserve to die. Hence, we're not vicious. However, you all snatched other people's children, destroying the lives of these children as well as their families. You are the evilest people in the world. You deserve to die." Luo Lang said with a cold face. Everyone in the family would be heartbroken when their child was kidnapped. Some parents would blame themselves for this and might even commit suicide. "Deserve to die? Ha ha ha." The two elders laughed loudly. The elder in the green gown stopped laughing and said coldly, "How arrogant of you. Two kids are telling me who deserves to die and who doesn't. You can test to see if we're arrogant." Ziyi smiled. In the next second, he rushed in front of the talking elder and aimed his fist at the man's forehead. The elder in green gown raised his hand to block the attack. When he touched Ziyi's fist, he frowned and glided back, distancing himself from Ziyi. "What's wrong?" The man in the gray gown was puzzled. "This brat's innate talent is lightning." The elder in green gown swung his arm, which was numb from the electricity. He turned serious. The lightning element was the strongest offensive element among all the elements. Even if he had been in the domain stage for almost 50 years, he needed to stay alert in case he made a mistake. Chapter 985 Special Domain. The green-gowned elder's expression changed. He looked at Ziyi with vigilance. "Who do you want?" Ziyi turned his head and asked Luo Lang, "The one in gray." Luo Lang pointed at the gray-gowned elder. The two elders were burning with anger when they saw the two young men picking and choosing them like they were buying fish in a fish market. This was an utter humiliation to them. Before they could teach these two young men a lesson, Luo Lang and Ziyi started rushing towards them. The green-gowned elder saw Ziyi coming towards him with a fist wrapped in a lifelike lightning dragon. The dragon opened its giant maws at him. He had suffered from power behind the lightning attack once already, so he retreated quickly. As for Luo Lang, he suddenly appeared behind the gray-gowned elder with a dagger in his hand. He tried to stab the dagger at the elder's heart. The elder in gray flicked his sleeve, blocking Luo Lang's dagger. Luo Lang quickly rushed to the side and sidestepped in front of the gray-gowned elder. The gray-gowned elder sneered, "How dare you use such cheap tricks?" This kind of movement was extremely effective against people at the Qijin stage or below, but it was a joke to Domain Realm Masters, as Domain Realm Masters were able to detect all forms of attack through detecting killing intent. At the same time, their domains protected their bodies, so such a simple assassination method wouldn't work against them. "As long as I stopped you, it's enough." Luo Lang smiled sweetly and his beautiful face turned even more enchanting. "Are you a man or a woman?" The gray-gowned elder teased him. This sentence angered Luo Lang and his gaze turned even colder. His mesmerizing face turned serious, and he changed from an enchanting beauty to a cold ice beauty. "I didn't expect such beauty to exist in the world." "Ha ha, seems like even God thinks that I shouldn't die, so he sent you here to me." The gray-gowned elder seemed excited. With this beauty in hand, Hades would be willing to help him to become a titled Domain Realm formidable warrior. People like them were already half a step into the coffin. They were willing to serve Hades because they hoped that he could help them to advance to the titled domain stage, as that would elongate their lifespan. The gray-gowned elder had already angered Luo Lang, yet, he continued provoking Luo Lang. eventually causing Luo Lang to explode in anger. Activate domain. A calm Luo Lang walked out from behind and stood beside him. The expression on his face never changed, like still water. What combination do you want? The calm personality asked indifferently. I want to tear him to pieces. Luo Lang gritted his teeth. I understand. The calm personality replied. If this was what the primary personality wanted, he would satisfy him. Dark personality, wild personality, come out. The calm personality turned back to the mindscape and talked to the personalities in Luo Lang's mindscape. Ha ha ha, it's finally my turn. A rough voice resounded through the room and a crazy-looking Luo Lang walked out from behind Luo Lang. The wild expression on his face caused him to look sickly beautiful. I didn't expect you to think of me. A sinister voice resounded through the room next, and Luo Lang with a dark expression stood behind the primary personality. The gray-gowned elder was stunned when he saw 4 different Luo Langs appearing in front of him. What kind of domain is this? Are those his clones? If he didn't feel the domain energy coming from those people, he would think that they were quadruplets. The gray-gowned elder turned serious when he saw Luo Lang's special domain. It looked like his prey was not easy prey. If he wasn't careful enough, he might become the prey instead. Although this is our first time working together, I believe that you can fulfill my desire to tear that old man apart. Luo Lang believed in his personalities. Of course. The wild personality replied. The dark personality smiled slightly. Surprisingly, his cold gaze subsided a little. The calm personality looked at the wild personality and the dark personality. As long as they interacted with the primary personality once, they would know how lucky they were to become the secondary personality of this primary personality. Well then, let's merge. The primary personality shouted. The 4 Luo Langs started merging together. After the merging was done, the one Luo Lang slowly opened his eyes. There were no emotions in his eyes. It was calm as still water. He spread his arms wide and 2 thin silver chains appeared in his palm. There was a cone-shaped arrow at the end of the chains. They raised their heads like a furious snake. If the gray-gowned elder moved, they would attack him instantly. The gray-gowned elder activated his domain too. The gray-gowned elder was a special domain realm master too. Luo Lang couldn't tell what his domain was, but there was a decaying smell in the air. It made everyone in the vicinity feel uncomfortable. However, this didn't affect the calm personality. After all, he was able to become the boss of all the secondary personalities because he was able to keep his cool in the face of every situation. The domain energies of the 2 people started clashing with each other. Loud popping sounds could be heard in the middle of 2 of them. Almost simultaneously, both of them attacked. Luo Lang stabbed his cone-shaped arrow at the gray-gowned elder. The gray-gowned elder jumped in the air and flew down, evading multiple attacks from the arrows in the process. Suddenly, he disappeared from the air and appeared a distance away. Just standing there motionlessly. The chains quickly changed its direction and flew towards him. However, just as they were about to touch him, they stopped. While the chains were following the gray-gowned elder, they got entangled. The chain didn't straighten up, so Luo Lang didn't know that they were tangled. The gray-gowned elder just stood there and smiled arrogantly. He pulled his hand and a few gray lines appeared in the air. Suddenly, multiple figures appeared behind Luo Lang and started attacking the unprepared Luo Lang. Luo Lang's chain was entangled, so he couldn't retract them back. Was he going to get hurt? In the face of crisis, Luo Lang suddenly laughed crazily. The gray-gowned elder thought that he was going to win, but when Luo Lang laughed, he felt a chill down his spine. Those figures immediately stopped when they were an inch away from Luo Lang. Crack! The sound of chains turning and snapping could be heard. The gray-gowned elder looked at what was happening to the chain and his expression darkened. Chapter 986 Familiar. A silver net suddenly appeared in the dark space behind Luo Lang. The net covered Luo Lang's back. All the figures that were controlled by the gray-gowned elder got trapped in the net. As expected, your domain is a controlling type, the irritating kind, the calm personality said indifferently. From the moment he smelled the disgusting smell, he had guessed that this was his domain. Why does that net look so familiar? Luo Lang was puzzled. TSK. Luo Lang's suddenly expression changed and he rolled his eyes. "I see." Luo Lang then looked enlightened. His other personalities could communicate through his mindscape. They didn't need to talk, however. The primary identity liked to nag. After the personalities in Luo Lang's mindscape saw how was Ling Lan using the ice threads, they were astounded. They got interested in this attack and had great respect for Ling Lan. It could be said that the other personalities decided to bow down to Luo Lang because he had a powerful and scary boss. Although Luo Lang's primary personality was naive and innocent and was willing to accept all of them, it wasn't the main reason that they took into account into accepting Luo Lang. Instead, the main reason was that the other personalities didn't want to be killed by Ling Lan, who was able to freeze them to death with a single look. Hence, if you wanted someone to listen to you, it's important to be much more powerful than them so that they would look up to you and be frightened by you. The personalities in Luo Lang's mindscape wanted to learn Ling Lan's technique, so they started analyzing it. However, this technique needed to be complemented by corresponding domain energy. The domain energy of the wild personality was the only one that could complement the technique. Thus, the silver net could only be formed by the wild personality. When Luo Lang heard about this, he silently labeled his boss as wild. The gray-gowned elder narrowed his eyes when he noticed that the corpse he controlled were all trapped by his opponent. He quickly placed his hands together and the corpse of the people that got killed by Ziyi and Luo Lang jumped up and rushed towards Luo Lang. He didn't believe that he wouldn't be able to break Luo Lang's net with his sea of corpses. Luo Lang's gaze turned cold again when he saw the gray-gowned elder using such a powerful technique. During fights, all the personalities would pass the decision-making to the calm personality. They would act based on the calm personality's order. They were all different personalities, but there wouldn't be any mistakes when they were executing techniques during a battle. This was because they were still a single person despite being all different. Suddenly, the tangled chain started spinning. Sounds of the small chains clanging into one another were heard. In an instant, Luo Lang got covered up by his chain, forming a huge chain cocoon around. "Are you trying to withstand my attack with this, in your dreams?" The gray-gowned elder laughed arrogantly when he saw the cocoon. He moved his fingers quickly. The corpses around the vicinity started decaying and a corrosive liquid began to spurt out from the corpses. The moment the liquid touched the chains, a hissing sound was heard from the corroding silver chains. At the same time, the chains gave off a disgusting smell. As the chain cocoon got slowly corroded from the outside, the calm personality still remained calm inside the cocoon. If this was just a normal chain cocoon, why did he call the dark personality out? It was time for him to perform. The calm personality moved his finger quickly and lingering shadows started snaking around his feet. The chains started spinning even faster to prevent a single side of the chain from corroding due to the liquid. Then, he said coldly, "Bloom, chain of flower." Numerous silver metal buds of flowers started appearing on the chain cocoon, covering the entire cocoon. Then, the buds bloomed. When the gray-gowned elder noticed that the blooming silver flowers were made from many tiny silver needles, his expression turned from one of confidence to one of fear and nervousness. "Shoot." The calm personality didn't give the gray-gowned elder any time to think. He quickly gave an order and the silver needles shot towards the gray-gowned elder as well as the corpse he was controlling. The sound of silver needles piercing through the air could be heard. The gray-gowned elder moved back immediately to evade the sharp needles that was powerful enough to turn his body in a sieve net. However, he was still too late. To protect himself, he had no choice but to gather all the corpses in front of him and use them as his meat shields. Soon, these corpses basically turned to little pieces of flesh on the floor. As for the gray-gowned elder, he had managed to escape the attack with the help of the corpses. However, this also meant that his technique couldn't be used anymore, as there was no corpse for him to control left. His domain only allowed him to control corpses that hadn't decayed yet. He couldn't do anything to these tiny pieces of flesh. Damn it! The gray-gowned elder gritted his teeth in frustration. However, without normal corpses, he still had some things up his sleeve. He shouted angrily, "K, Mai, Wang, Liang, Ba, Zhao, Kua, come out. Luo Lang's powerful technique had forced the gray-gowned elder to use his ultimate skill. After he shouted, the ground within his domain territory started vibrating and 7 corpses that were blue-gray and hideous-looking crawled out from the ground. The calm personality frowned when he saw those corpses. Is there any problem? Luo Lang asked seriously. It's okay, I just didn't expect him to have such a skill, they calmly replied indifferently. These corpses were not ordinary corpses, so they couldn't be destroyed by the silver needles. The defenses of their bodies was extremely strong. Those corpses that got nourished with the domain of Domain Realm Masters were said to be as strong as Domain Realm Masters. I'm not strong enough to fight these evil things, the dark personality said coldly. His power was from the same base as his opponent. They were both using dark energy, hence, the damage caused by his attack would naturally decrease. I understand. The calm personality acknowledged what he said. Then, the dark personality walked out of Luo Lang's body and disappeared. At the same time, a figure with a vibrant aura appeared in Luo Lang's domain territory. The 7 corpses started getting agitated when the figure appeared. His aura made them uncomfortable. It was as if he was their natural enemy. The gray-gowned elder knew that something was wrong when he saw his corpses starting to shiver in fear. He controlled the 7 unwilling corpses and forced them to attack Luo Lang's body, which hadn't merged with the bright figure. The bright personality saw this and immediately stepped into Luo Lang's body. Luo Lang shouted, Bright, I don't like you, but for the sake of destroying these disgusting things, I'll cooperate with you. Let's destroy these things. They shouldn't exist in the first place, Bright said calmly. TSK, this is why we shouldn't have brought the bright personality out. The wild personality thought to himself. He always sounded as though he was the only one who was worth existing. The silver chain started shining brightly. That holy aura it gave out caused the 7 corpses to feel extreme pain from the core of their bodies. The holy aura caused great damage to dark energy characters like them. Of course, at the same time, the dark energy was equally lethal to the bright energy. Chapter 987 Zir. The gray-gowned elder was clear about this, so he forced more energy out of his gray domain. Soon, the entire space was filled with a rotting smell. The dark energy even started corroding Luo Lang's holy aura too. Luo Lang had no expressions on his face, as he was taken over by the calm personality again. Howl. The 7 corpses howled in the air. Then, they jumped up and pounced at the chain cocoon. They opened their dry, thin and sickly-looking hands. Their black nails grew longer, turning into sharp claws. There was also a black cloud with the aura of death around them. They began slashing the shining silver cocoon in front of them. Clang, clang, clang. The silver chain started breaking under the sharp black claws like pieces of tofu. The gray-gowned elder smiled proudly at the power exhibited by his 7 corpses. He lifted his right hand and pointed at Bear Luo Lang, who was in the center of the cocoon. Then, the 7 corpses charged at Luo Lang with fervor. Just as Luo Lang was about to be clawed into a pile of meat, Luo Lang suddenly smiled brightly. The broken chains suddenly turned alive again. They bounced up from the air and twirled themselves around the corpses. The 7 corpses tried struggling, but the white aura on the chain caused the suppression power of the chain to be stronger and more powerful. The 7 corpses started giving off a smelly and black smoke. This was because they were getting scalded by the white aura. Luo Lang stood in the middle and curled his fingers slightly. The chains around the corpses became tighter even, causing even more damage to the corpses. The gray-gowned elder turned serious. He didn't expect his opponent to feign weakness in order to lure his corpses into the chain array. This is boss's strongest technique. As his comrade, I can't be too weak. Luo Lang smiled brightly. However, in the next second, his smile disappeared. Go and die. His voice was calm, wild, and indifferent. The white aura exploded, blinding everyone's eyes with a flash of white light. The gray-gowned elder suddenly felt a sense of danger. He quickly elevated his domain to its maximum. After that, he waved his arms and attempted to control the corpses to kill his opponent forcefully. Howl. The 7 corpses shouted fiercely and broke free from the chains around their bodies. However, there was an innumerable amount of chains around them. When one chain broke, another chain would take over its position. All these happened during the time when everyone was blinded by the white light. As the white light disappeared gradually, he saw what was happening in the chain array. He was delighted and felt that the danger was over. Suddenly, he felt his chest was in pain. The gray-gowned elder looked down in surprise. A piece of the chain had come near him when he was looking at the chain array and stabbed him in his heart. He suddenly understood that the white light was not to suppress his corpses, it was to hide this piece of chain. The chain was small and came too suddenly, so he didn't notice it in time, as all his attention was focused on the 7 corpses. Boom! The silver chain exploded and blood stained the face of the gray-gowned elder. The gray-gowned elder said in pain, "Despicable! Do you have no shame?" Luo Lang just glanced at him coldly. Then, numerous chains quickly stabbed into the elder's body, turning him into dust. The 7 corpses just turned into 7 piles of black sludge without the support of the domain energy from the gray-gowned elder. After he killed the gray-gowned elder, Luo Lang's domain collapsed. The wild, calm, and bright personalities returned into his mindscape. Luo Lang kneeled on the floor with a pale face. He smiled bitterly. Merging 3 personalities is still too much for me. I can only last for a short period of time. Luckily, the calm personality changed how he was attacking at the very last moment. The other personalities smoothly cooperated with him, and that was how they managed to kill their opponent before Luo Lang's domain collapsed. The 7 corpses were just too powerful. With Luo Lang's current ability, he wouldn't be able to destroy them. Hence, he had to attack the source of their power. No wonder boss always says that we're too weak. Domain is really just the start. Luo Lang finally understood that they had just stepped on the path of becoming a formidable warrior. Their opponents would only get stronger from this point onwards. After Luo Lang killed the gray-gowned elder, Ziyi, who was engulfed by a world of green, was wrapped up in a crucial moment too. The green-gowned elder was a wood element domain realm master, a natural counter to a lightning element domain realm master. Thus, the power of Ziyi's lightning element would naturally be weakened in front of a wood element domain realm master. The 2 elders were both very experienced in battles. Hence, the gray-gowned elder chose Ziyi as his opponent to his advantage. It looked as though Ziyi and Luo Lang chose their opponent, but instead, the elders were the ones who lured them into making this decision. The green-gowned elder appeared to have gained the upper hand now, but in actual fact, he was having a hard time. This was because when Ziyi noticed that his lightning was unable to hurt his opponent greatly, he decisively split his lightning into 2. Ziyi's lightning element was different from other lightning element domain realm masters. He had 2 different lightning element, one yin and one yang. If the yang lightning didn't have the yin lightning to neutralize it, it was more explosive and faster than normal lightning, making it really difficult to control, as the yang lightning might be backfire and hurt the user instead. As for the yin lightning, its damage was caused to one's spiritual mind, not the body. The green-gowned elder could block yang lightning, but he couldn't do anything to the yin lightning. The green-gowned elder's plan was to use his domain to exhaust Ziyi's domain energy. He felt that a young man who had just entered the domain realm must have a lesser amount of domain energy than him. However, after experiencing the damage the lightning caused to his spiritual power, the elder in green gown decided that he couldn't stall out the battle any longer. If not, he would lose this battle. Thus, green seedlings started popping out of the ground around them. Soon, the seedlings turned into huge trees and engulfed them within. When he saw his opponent attempting to use his ultimate technique, Ziyi was elated. He was bothered by the yin lightning too. The yin lightning was able to hurt his opponent, but he would receive a backlash too. After all, he wasn't the one controlling the yin lightning. Z2, it's time for the life or death battle. Gather your strength. Ziyi shouted in his mindscape. It's Zir, not Z2. A cold voice sounded in his mindscape. Z1, take care of yourself first and don't drag me down. Chapter 988, The Door of Hope. Haha, then let's see who's stronger. Ziyi pretended to not hear Zir's deliberate name-calling and laughed out loud. Immediately afterwards, lightning began to snake around Ziyi's body. Beneath the snakes of purple lightning, a shadow appeared. It was Zier. Zier looked at Ziyi with a complicated look on his face. Ziyi saw his expression and smirked as he nodded towards Zier. Then, he reached out his right hand. Zier looked at that hand and sighed. He reached out with his left hand and held Ziyi's hand. Ziyi's smile was even bigger now. He turned around to look towards the green-gowned elder and said softly, "I'm still just a bit weaker right now. In the future, I will become even stronger so that you can actually appear in front of my comrades." After seemingly understanding Ziyi's unfinished statement, Zier also held Ziyi's hand firmly. "I hope you won't let me down. That lonely and cold world isn't a really good place to live." Zier thought of Ziyi's extremely capable boss. With him around them, he believed that Ziyi would not become a weakling who couldn't withstand his powers. Ziyi didn't know that what gave Zier's confidence to believe in him was not him, but actually Ling Lan, who had appeared only for a short moment in Zier's world. As Ziyi and Zier walked hand in hand, the snakes of glowing purple lightning around their bodies became even darker, and eventually into a pitch-black color. But when put under a light, there was still a shade of purple, proving that the lightning was dark purple. As the purple lightning became darker and darker, there was dangerous and suffocating aura slowly exuding out from within. The green-gowned elder had already raised the power level of his domain to its strongest. Seeing Ziyi's domain energy getting stronger, he decisively made a move. The jade-like sea all around him went straight towards Ziyi. Seeing this, Ziyi and Zier raised their interlocked hands and two lightning dragons shoot from their hands. The dragon that appeared from Ziyi's left hand was vibrant in color with some red shade in the purple. The radiance of the color was seemingly enough to reach into a person's soul. It also made the jade-colored sea around them lose its color. The aura the lightning was exuding out was the same as Ziyi's personality, free and enthusiastic, and could easily affect the atmosphere around him. Zier's dragon from his right hand, on the other hand, was fully black. Within the black dragon, there was an inked lightning with tar-like density, calmly moving along with the movement of the dragon. It was just like him, a presence that was calm enough to enclose the universe into it. Their interlocked hands were suddenly clenched firmly. Then, the two different colored lightning dragons were pushed outwards from their hands at the same time. The two lightning dragons ruthlessly flew towards the Jade Sea. Once the radiantly colored dragon touched the Jade Sea was instantly set ablaze. Although fire was destructive, there was also the power of life infused in it. The black dragon on the other hand turned the Jade Sea on its side into a gray wasteland. That was the power of death. These two different dragon forms stunned the green-gowned elder, but he quickly slapped himself awake and countless thick branches suddenly appeared from the ground to attack Ziyi's main body. However, the branches that were once filled with life quickly withered away and had its life force drained the instant it got close to Ziyi. Compared to Ziyi's lightning power, Zier's lightning was more suitable for defense. At that moment, the two dragons finally combined together in midair. One began to take in the power of life and the other was replenish its destructive power. As the lightning continuously crackled and burst apart, it became stronger and stronger, before finally congregating into a gigantic lightning dragon. As the green-gowned elder was looking at it with despair on his face, the dragon instantly devoured him. Seeing that his opponent was defeated, Ziyi, who was enduring immense pain until now, instantly sat onto the ground. He opened his mouth and coughed out burning black smoke. "You're still too weak. If you don't make body stronger, you won't be able to endure my destructive powers the next time I come out," Zier said coldly. Although Ziyi controlled his power of life well, he was still weaker compared to Zier's knowledge of his own destructive power. Ziyi laughed out loud. Right as he was about to answer, his wounds opened up, causing him to grit his teeth in pain. Seeing this, Zier coldly said, "You should rest up so you don't have to trouble your buddy." He looked towards Luo Lang, whose condition was also not so good. "But it seems your buddy needs your help more." Hearing that Luo Lang's condition was not good, Ziyi instantly jumped up in response. This made him seem that was not injured at all. Ziyi shook his head as he saw this scene. When Ziyi heard that his comrade was injured, he could completely disregard his own injuries. Compared to Ziyi, he wouldn't care about comrades first. Instead, he would be selfish and care for himself first. This was perhaps why their father chose Ziyi and didn't choose him. Ziyi felt his body slowly become transparent and returning to the cold world that he belonged in. Luo Lang, are you alright? Ziyi had already ran towards Luo Lang and asked him hurriedly. Luo Lang's face was pale. In order to defeat his opponent, he completely depleted his domain energy, so he was now unable to move from the exhaustion. Ziyi quickly helped Luo Lang to drink a strong recovery agent that Li Shi had made. At the same time, he didn't forget to drink one himself. Not long after, Luo Lang's complexion began to look better. Luo Lang didn't think that depleting his domain energy would result in such a strong side effect. He did not even have the energy to take out a medicinal agent. If Ziyi had somehow lost, the two of them would have actually died here. After thinking about this, Luo Lang couldn't help but be terrified at the thought. The thought of becoming stronger was even more engraved in his mind. After seeing that Luo Lang was alright, Ziyi stopped worrying and continued to investigate this building. He discovered that other than the children locked up in cages, the others were either dead or ran away when the two of them were fighting the elders. What should we do about those children? Ziyi pointed towards the children in cages who were unconscious. Luo Lang frowned and twirled his hair with his finger. In the next second, Luo Lang's eyes calmed down and said, "We're not saviors. Our boss's orders were to infiltrate and destroy, not save. Whether they can successfully get out of this building would depend on their luck." Ziyi knew this was Luo Lang's extremely calm personality talking. He also knew that his judgment was rarely wrong, so he nodded in agreement without much hesitation. However, the calm personality still had a sliver of humanity left in his body, so he told Ziyi to open the cages, cut the shackles around their limbs to give them a sliver of hope. After finishing this, Ziyi carried Luo Lang, who had not fully recovered, on his back and left the building. Not long after they had left, one youngster from the cages woke up from his dream world. He saw his cage was opened and the shackles around his arms and legs were broken. He then saw that the entire area was in ruins, with countless puddles of blood and silence all around him. The youngster immediately realized that this horrifying place was completely destroyed by two masked individuals who had suddenly appeared. The opened cages and broken shackles was the opportunity the two strong individuals had given them to escape this hellhole. The youngster understood that with so many people, the two strong individuals could not save everyone. Plus, they also didn't have any reason to save them. However, just the thought of giving them a chance to escape was enough to let this youngster be grateful eternally. He knew that this act was essentially the same as giving them all a new start on life. Chapter 989. Not willing to give in. The youngster crawled out of the cage. As he walked a few steps forward, he suddenly bit his lip and walked back into the cage. Then, he began to go and wake the other innocent children who hadn't woken up yet. Soon after, all these children woke up, and along with a few adults, they slowly crawled out and escaped from the destroyed building. They were lucky that their minds weren't successfully wiped by the elders. They still knew where they were from. Even though some had their minds wiped and forget everything, their cellmates still told them what had happened to them and where they came from. Although these individuals had escaped the clutches of these villains, they still needed to go through many more dangerous and difficult situations if they wanted to go back home. However, this was their own story and was not related to the story of Linglan and the others. It was just that only after decades, these people would think about the two masked domain realm masters who saved them, and guess who they were. At the three locations, Li Lang and Little White had it the easiest. Although Ziyi and Luo Lang was in somewhat of a difficult situation, they still resolved perfectly in the end. It was only Liu Furong and Zhao Jun who were stuck in a life-or-death crisis. Zhao Jun ran around the hidden corridor as his life was on the line. His face was pale, with sweat dripping down from his body like raindrops. If it wasn't for the fact that there were many hidden corridors, along with the fact that the enemy domain realm master was afraid of going all out and create too much noise, and accidentally causing the base to be exposed by the people above them. If that wasn't the case, he would probably have been killed by the domain realm master who was chasing him. This was the power of domain realm masters. Although he was close to the limit of becoming a domain realm master, it was still the same as a 3-year-old fighting an adult when fighting a real domain realm master. He was completely unable to defend himself. Zhao Jun didn't know how long he could hold on. He only knew that if he wanted to live, he must run away with all his might, until Liu Furong arrives. Zhao Jun felt there was a terrifying power creeping behind him. He didn't even think and somersaulted into corridor on his right. Bam! A terrifying power instantly hit the place he was running towards. If it wasn't for the fact that he was lucky that a tunnel had appeared beside him, he definitely would have been severely injured from this attack. Although Zhao Jun luckily got away from the attack, he still felt his back was slashed by something, causing him immense and unbearable pain. However, Zhao Jun didn't have the time to examine his own back. He just ignored the immense pain and ran through the corridor hurriedly. It was because Zhao Jun knew that the domain realm master would not stop chasing him. Another terrifying attack came towards him. This time, however, Zhao Jun was not as lucky, as there weren't any other corridors to turn into. Seeing this, Zhao Jun bit his lip and pounced forward. Without any tunnels to turn towards, Zhao Jun was still sent flying by the shockwave even though he dodged away from the center of the attack. He then rolled on the ground a few meters away from the attack. Ugh! Zhao Jun spat out a mouthful of blood. The attack of the domain realm master still severely injured him even though he suppressed much of it with his Qi Jin at great perfection. A silhouette appeared in the corridor. It was the silhouette of a 40 to 50-year middle-aged man. It was the domain realm master who kidnapped Liu Aihua and injured Hong Xuaya. Hey, hey, hey. The man laughed softly. You're really good at running. But where can you run to now? Zhao Jun tried his best to bear the immense pain from his back and bit his lip as he stood up. He quickly thought in his mind to see how could get away with his life from the clutches of his opponent. After seeing that his prey was thinking of running away, the domain realm master threw out his fist and a formless attack went straight towards Zhao Jun. Zhao Jun could only raise his hand to block, but he was once again sent flying away by the force behind the fist. Bam! Zhao Jun smashed onto the ground face first. The blood from his mouth was gushing out uncontrollably. In the end, Zhao Jun had become severely injured and lost his ability to move. You're this weak, and you dare to cause trouble in our territory? You really don't know your place. As the domain realm master smiled coldly, he slowly walked to the motionless Zhao Jun. He bent down and held Zhao Jun's neck with his right hand. He then lifted him up by the neck. Zhao Jun's face instantly turned blood red. His opponent's fingers were ruthlessly strangling him, causing him to be unable to breathe, which instantly made his face go red. As time went by, Zhao Jun felt he was close to death for the first time. Am I actually going to die here? Zhao Jun's mind could only think of this. Even if he was going to die like this, he still wasn't willing to give in. He still wanted to follow his boss through the stars and create more miracles. Compared to Qi Long, Luo Lang and Han Zhijian, who were of military backgrounds, along with Li Lang, Li Shu and Ziyi, who were from elite families, Zhao Jun's background was the most humble from Lingshan Battle Clan. He was from a common family and did not have any strong connections. It should be said that if Ling Lan had actually left the military, he was probably the only person from Lingshan Battle Clan who could follow Ling Lan without causing any trouble. Zhao Jun clearly knew about Ling Lan's situation, that his chances of remaining in the military was not high. Just a Ling Zhao was already enough for the entire Federation. If there was also a Ling Lan, it would only bring about bad tidings for the Ling family. Zhao Jun had already made his decision to follow his boss despite the fact that he was still going to have a good future in the military if he stayed there. Neither his comrades, seniors nor General Ling Zhao would treat him differently than Ling Lan's team members who followed her from the beginning even if Ling Lan left. However, The factions within the military was set in stone. This made Zhao Jun feel discouraged. Even a general's son couldn't escape from becoming pressured by others. How could a commoner like him even hold up? Instead, he should just follow Boss Lan and travel through the stars to create their own legends. He would be much happier and free compared to staying in the military and plot against one another. I'm not willing to give in. Not willing. Zhao Jun screamed out in his mind. The future was what Zhao Jun wanted. Zhao Jun began to fight for his life. He wanted to continue living. However, with his current strength, he had no chance against a Domain Realm Master. As his neck continued to be strangled for a longer amount of time, Zhao Jun's struggle became more and more intense. The Domain Realm Master looked coldly towards Zhao Jun, who was fruitlessly struggling for his life. He loved seeing his prey struggle before their death, as this would excite him and give him a feeling of accomplishment. As the oxygen in his body was slowly deprived out from his body, Zhao Jun's eyes opened wider and wider. The unwillingness to give in and anger in his eyes made the Domain Realm Master, who was used to seeing people die, uncontrollably shudder in terror. Right as Zhao Jun was about to die from suffocation, a strong force of presence exploded from within his body. The Domain Realm Master instantly understood why he was scared just a few moments ago. He didn't think that the rumor of breaking through the barrier during a crisis would actually happen right in front of his eyes. Don't even think about it. The Domain Realm Master roared. He was not going to allow his prey to reserve the tide on him and prey on him instead. He exerted more force in his right hand. He was rushing to break Zhao Jun's neck and kill this young man, who was about to advance into the domain stage, right here and now. Suddenly, he discovered that his right hand actually couldn't move at all. It turns out, unbeknownst to him, his right wrist was being held tight by a large and strong hand. Chapter 990 Wrong Person. Inside the temporarily rented room, Qilong felt his wrist vibrate. He lowered his head and had a complicated expression on his face. What's wrong? Han Jijian saw this and asked him curiously. Boss gave me an order, replied Qilong. Han Jijian instantly sat up straight and asked nervously, what's the order? Kill people. Qilong's expression instantly turned cold. The boss's order really aligned with what he wanted to do. Jijian, I'll leave this place to you. Qilong stood up and put on the black jacket that on the sofa. He turned around and said in a serious tone, before I return, you have to protect everyone here. I know, although my physical skills isn't as strong as yours, it's still not that weak. Just leave this place to me. Han Jijian knew that if Qilong needed to move out, the opponent was definitely domain stage individuals. He felt a bit of regret, as domain battles were something he wasn't even qualified to participate in. Seeing Qilong's silhouette disappear in front of him, Han Jijian clenched his fists tightly. If he was to continue to stay at his current stage, one of these days he would not be able to follow them in their mission and be left behind by them. Looks like I need to do more training, Han Jijian said to himself. I disagree. Li Shi's voice rang from behind him. Your body has already exceeded its limit by a lot. Even if I use the best recovery agent, I still won't be able to repair the parts of your body that had exceeded its limit. You're still young, so you are feeling it. However, if this continues and reaches the threshold, the foundation of your body will be completely destroyed. I know, but with the amount of training you're giving me, I can't get close to their level at all. Han Jijian angrily punched the wall beside him. This was also the reason why he was secretly increasing the amount of training. He couldn't wait any longer. He didn't want to be someone who was protected by others every time something happens and watch his comrades risking their lives for him. All of us have our own place, Han Jijian. If you can't find your place, even if your physical skills were to advance to the domain stage, you would still be a person that will not be needed. Li Shi said coldly. Then tell me, what is my place? Han Jijian shouted. Strategist? Isn't Li Lan performing better than me? He also constantly reminds me that I'm not as good as him. Not only that, his physical skills and mecha piloting skills are also better than me. Li Lan. Li Shi sighed softly. He could only say that Han Jijian comparing himself with Li Lan was comparing with the wrong person. As someone who was destined to not live long, unable to operate a mecha and unable to learn physical skills, he had clearly cheated somehow to reach his level today and did not go through everything logically. Have you never realized that Li Lan's goal was never to become the battle team strategist? In the past few days when he watched his elder cousin brother, Li Shi finally understood him. Li Shi's words dumbfounded Han Jijian as he raised his head with a blank expression. If Li Lan's goal wasn't to become a strategist, then why did he mock him in all aspects? Think about it, when he was mocking you, who was there? Li Shi could only say this much. Whether Han Jijian could get out of this mindset would depend on Han Jijian himself. It had to be said that intelligent individuals were people who would willingly go down in a rabbit hole. Han Jijian was like this. Even Li Shi's demon-like elder cousin brother would do dumb things sometimes and make Li Shi go speechless. Li Shi's words made Han Jijian go into deep thought. What does Li Lan want if he doesn't want the position of strategist in the team? Moving away from Han Jijian's concerns, the person who came to save Zhao Jun was Qilong, who had received Ling Lan's order earlier. Ling Lan, of course, wouldn't let her team members be in danger. She had prepared beforehand for Qilong to reinforce Liu Furong's group. The Domain Realm Master saw that a black-jacket young man had already stood in front of him and was staring him down coldly. Suddenly, the Domain Realm Master's right wrist writhed in pain. His fingers uncontrollably let go and Zhao Jun, who was being choked by him, fell to the ground thereafter. The Domain Realm Master took a deep breath and the domain power from his body instantly exploded out. Qilong jumped back a few meters. At the same time, he also took Zhao Jun, whose force of presence had completely expanded. The Domain Realm Master held in the surprise in his mind and coldly asked, "Who are you?" "I've been looking for you for a long time," Qilong said calmly. He was thankful to his boss to let him participate in this mission. In the end, he met up with the Domain Realm Master who injured Han Xuya. The familiar domain energy on Qilong's body made the Domain Realm Master instantly remember something. His expression changed slightly, but he still tried to stay calm and show that he knew nothing. "You people intruded on our territory and tried to mess with our organization. Tell me, who sent you?" He realized that the little girl was trouble, but didn't think the opposition would knock on their door so quickly. The Domain Realm Master felt bitter and depressed. He now hoped that this situation wouldn't affect the impression he had with Hades. Otherwise, his hard work in the past decade would all be for naught. Qilong laughed coldly as the killing intent in his eyes showed clearly. "Don't play dumb with me. Since you dare to kidnap our people and injure them, then you must pay the price." As expected, they already knew we were the ones who did that. The Domain Realm Master's eyes instantly froze. Although Hades Palace was afraid of causing trouble, they still weren't afraid of dealing with trouble. The Chaotic Lands was always the territory of Hades Palace. If these people didn't know any better, then they would not be able to leave this place. The Domain Realm Master increased his domain energy to the highest degree. Qilong was also doing this as well. The two of them didn't want to fight a long battle of endurance and was planning on defeating each other with one attack. As night fell, the products in the 3 districts were all more or less sold. It finally reached the time for the black market auction that everyone was excited about. Ling Lan, Yi Shao and DB Luaya followed President Tu into the auction house. The auction house venue was huge. After entering it, there were countless seats everywhere. Surprisingly, there weren't any private areas for VIPs. Everyone was sitting in the atrium with their auction sign to participate in this auction process. Of course, this type of arrangement would also completely expose the identity of the people attending the auction. This was a specialty of the Chaotic Lands. If you have money, you can buy anything. However, whether they could actually receive the auctioned item would depend if they had the capabilities to take it home. Many secret factions enter the auction house not to buy anything, but to know who bought what. They would choose the people they would make a move on. Thus, the trip home was a bloodbath. It was the time where the buyers would test it on their abilities. The auction began systematically. At the beginning, The items that were being auctioned off were some precious and little antiques. There weren't many people who were interested in these items, so the auctions went by quickly, and it quickly reached the midpoint of the auction. The midpoint of the auction was auctioning a few children who had potential, along with domain realm masters who had their minds wiped successfully. Here, the domain stage individuals could also be considered an item for sale. When these auction items started appearing on the stage, the atmosphere of the entire auction house began to heat up. Ling Lan saw little Awa, who had eyes of fear, on the stage. Ling Lan then instantly narrowed her eyes in rage. Chapter 991 Rainbow Raiders. Perhaps there were too many people sitting in the crowd and Ling Lan's seat was somewhat at the side. Little Awa wasn't aware that Ling Lan was at the scene. She just saw countless strangers on their seats looking at her with gluttonous and greedy stares. She was so afraid that she had to curled up in a corner of the cage to just get some semblance of comfort. She began to pinch her palm with great force, hoping that the pain could calm her down. At the same time, she was so terrified that the tears welling up in her eyes would begin to drip down her face, attracting more attention to herself. In the back of mind, she remembered that Zhang Hui had once told her that crying doesn't solve any problems, and only being calm would bring about hope. Despite little Awa encouraging herself, she still had 2 teardrops run down her face uncontrollably and silently, because she suddenly realized the fact that she might never see her family again. Awa, don't cry. Little Awa heard a soft voice behind and she turned around to look who was talking to her. It was a boy who was also put up for auction along with her. He was 2 years older than her. He comforted her after seeing Liu Awa silently sob to herself in her cage. He comforted because he was in the same situation as her. Children who still had their memories intact. He wasn't like the other children who had already forgotten who they were after having their minds wiped and becoming items for people to buy. Perhaps it was because he seemed lonely or he saw himself in her. When he saw that there was a little girl who also had her memory intact, he couldn't help but let down his guard and comfort her. Understood, elder brother Kiao. Liu Awa nodded thankfully towards the boy. Now, even the smallest of comforts would make Liu Awa's heart calm down. The auctioneer was very considerate and put up all of the detailed information of the auction items on auction screen, making it convenient for those attending the auction to look through and choose the items they were interested in. There are actually 2 titled Domain Realm Masters. Not bad, not bad. After seeing the auction list on the auction screen, a chubby old man beside President Tu showed an excited expression on his face. Compared to other auction items, humans were considered the much safer purchase, as the auction venue had a special method that made it if the buyers were to die, those who were sold to them would also commit suicide, dying along with them. This was the reason why this part of the auction was popular. By purchasing children with a lot of potential or domain realm masters, not only would the buyers acquire a strong security force in the future, they wouldn't have to worry about any privy eyes at the auction. After the auctioneer declared the auction had begun, he began going through the serial numbers of the items one by one. Little Awa's serial number was at the end because she was added in at the very last moment. Not long after, the auctioneer reached the number of the boy who was comforting little Awa. The atmosphere in the auction house suddenly became intense and everyone jumped in to participate in the bid for the boy. This was because the boy had awakened a water element-based innate talent and had awakened it for a long time already. Of course, the reason everyone had their eyes set on him was because he was only 12 years old. Additionally, his physical skills had actually reached the peak stage of refinement. The black market also determined that in 1 year he would definitely advance into Qijin stage. If things went as planned, advancing into Qijin stage at 13 years old and in addition to his awakened innate talent of the mild-mannered water element, this boy would definitely reach the domain stage when he grew older. This was why he was so popular among the auction house attendees. As the boy's bidding price rose higher and higher, the boy's expression became colder and colder. It was almost somewhat numb. President Tu, who was calmly sitting beside Ling Lan, suddenly raised his brows and smirked. It seemed that there were others who didn't like the black market other than Ling Lan. Not long after, the highest bidding price had appeared in today's auction. The auctioneer shouted out excitedly, "Buyer number 27 has bid 250 million coins. Is there anyone else? This item will definitely become a domain realm master in the future." Going once, the auctioneer was trying to ignite the fighting spirit of other buyers. However, without a doubt, this price was already quite high for a future domain realm master. Many of the attendees were all sly old foxes or merchants themselves, and would of course not be provoked or disturbed by the auctioneer's words. The auctioneer excitedly and yet helplessly struck the mallet the third time. "Congratulations, buyer number 27. Right at that moment, Yi Xiao and DB Luaya, who sat on the other side of President Tu, suddenly jumped up and rushed towards the stage. "Stop right there." Right as these words were said, many black market guards immediately jumped out from all sides in an attempt to intercept Yi Xiao and DB Luaya. Bam, bam. Yi Xiao and DB Luaya expanded their force of presence in an instant and sent those guards who were attempting to intercept them flying backwards. The two of them, on the other hand, didn't change the direction of their movements in the slightest and quickly jumped up onto the stage. Their goal was that boy. Right as they were about to reach the boy, a strong mud wall suddenly appeared in front of the boy. Seeing this, Yi Xiao and DB Luaya immediately released one fire dragon and one water dragon out from their hands to ruthlessly strike the mud wall. Bang! A large explosion resounded through the auction house. The mud wall instantly cracked open from the force of the fire and water dragon. Yi Xiao then suddenly vanished from where stood. Right as he appeared behind the boy and was about to grab him, a person clad in white had already stood in his way. At the same time, a black-cloaked elder had also appeared in front of DB Luaya. "Who are you people? You actually dare to cause trouble in our chaotic lands?" A sharp and thin voice rang by their ears. It turns out, the person clad in white who was standing in front of Yi Xiao actually had heavy makeup on his face. He was actually a middle-aged man with his fingers out like a woman and had an effeminate voice. Hearing this, Yi Xiao was apologetic and replied, "I'm sorry. It's only because we saw our people be forced to be auctioned off. We were angry and made a move impulsively. We're not looking for trouble, so I hope everyone can let us off." "You think just saying sorry will resolve everything? Haha, is that what you think we in the chaotic lands do?" The black-cloaked elder replied coldly, "Don't think you can do whatever you want in the chaotic lands just because you're both domain realm masters. Here, we have more than enough domain realm masters." After these words were said, President Tu, who was already pale from seeing Yi Xiao and DB Luaya make a move, was now trembling. If it wasn't for the fact that Ling Lan had helped him up, he might have been so scared that he would have fallen on the floor. He didn't think that two domain realm masters were hiding among the mercenary team he had hired. He especially didn't think that they would cause trouble in the black market of the chaotic lands. He could feel his future being all grayed out. The chaotic lands would definitely make his merchant group take responsibility. A lighter punishment would be to refuse trading with them, while a larger punishment could possibly be to completely wipe out their entire merchant group. After hearing the forceful words of their opponent, Yi Xiao and DB Luaya's expression did not waver. Yi Xiao even shook his head and said coldly, "If that's the case, then we want to know why our people would appear on your auction stage." Light and Dark Dragon are both very angry about this and decided to come here themselves to resolve this issue. After the names Light and Dark Dragon were spoken, the other auction attendees, who originally thought Yi Xiao and DB Luaya were giving up their lives, couldn't help but shudder in fear. "You're from the Rainbow Raiders?" The effeminate middle-aged man suddenly gasped after hearing those names. "That's right." Yi Xiao and DB Luaya replied proudly. "Every world has its strongest individuals. In the chaotic lands, Frost Monarch, Hades and Ninja were the strongest. In the adventurer world, there were also 7 kings that ruled that world. Among these 7 kings, the ones who no one dared to offend were Light and Dark Dragon from the Allied Adventurer Group, the Rainbow Raiders. It was because they were like brothers to each other and they would never be apart. One Imperial-level domain expert was already invincible. Then, 2 Imperial-level domain expert. Even if it was another Imperial-level domain expert, they still wouldn't dare to offend these 2 people. Thus, almost all parts of the Chaotic Lands would tremble after hearing the names of Light and Dark Dragon. Chapter 992 Hurt, who is so important that 2 kings came out to rescue him. Everyone looked at the young boy who had no expressions on his face and started guessing his identity. HMPH. A sudden snort shocked everyone. You can look for your man, but you don't have to destroy 3 of our bases. That is too much. The person who snorted at the start was heard again. Yi Xiao was stunned. Are you mad? What are you talking about? Yi Xiao, who didn't know what was happening, just randomly said, if you dared to mess with the Rainbow Raiders, you must be prepared to bear the consequences. How arrogant. Most people might be afraid of Light and Dark Dragon, but we're not. Another furious voice could be heard. No matter where he came from, since he's already ours, he will stay ours. A frightening force of presence rushed towards the boy. Yi Xiao and DB Luaya were stunned. They thought that the 3 kings of the Chaotic Lands would give some face to Light and Dark Dragon, but they surprisingly didn't. They just wanted to kill the person they wanted to take back. Hades, you half-dead man, how dare you try to kill my child? A cold voice suddenly sounded. A strong force of presence blocked the vicious aura that wanted to kill the young boy. Dark Dragon, you killed people in our territory without informing us. Is this how you show respect? An angry voice replied. Ninja, it's time for you to stop. You've done so many cruel things. Aren't you afraid that your life will be shortened by your sins? A lazy voice sounded after that. Light, your hands are tainted with blood too. Ninja sneered. TSK, the people we killed are people who deserve to die. We have a clearer conscience than you, Light replied without taking a step back. PFFT, Light, who are you trying to fool? Ninja scoffed at Light's blatant lie. Let's not waste time bickering. Light and I didn't come here to fight with you. We just want to bring our child back, Dark Dragon replied coldly. What about our people? Hades shouted angrily. What about them? I haven't even taken my revenge on you for making my child suffer. Dark Dragon replied with a cold smile. Haha, since that is the case, let's settle this now. Hades was so angry that he started laughing maniacally. The moment his laughter ended, 4 invisible energy collided in the air above the atrium. Bang! A loud explosion occurred. The huge force flattened the auction stage. Even the roof and the walls of the atrium had collapsed. The people in the atrium hugged their heads and scurried away when they saw 4 Imperial stage domain experts fighting on top of them. If these 4 people didn't hold back their strength just now because they were worried about the people below, most of the people there would be dead by now. President Tu brought his men and left the atrium hurriedly. After he ran for a distance, he quickly realized that Zhang Hua wasn't beside him anymore. He may have ran in a different direction, or he is slower than us. President Tu was frightened by what had happened, so he quickly led his men back to their base. He was going to leave the next day and never came to the Chaotic Lands again. As for Zhang Hua, President Tu wished him good luck, and hoped that he was able to escape from those domain realm masters. The 4 unwelcome guests were in the destroyed atrium. They split into 2 groups and stood opposite each other. On one side, a person with a black cape was standing beside a person wearing a ghost mask. No one could see their faces. On the other side, there was a cold-looking elder in black clothes and white hair, as well as an amiable-looking elder in a red cloak. Even domain realm masters like Yi Xiao and DB Luaya felt that they couldn't withstand the energy from these Imperial stage domain experts. Yi Xiao and DB Luaya were still lucky. Their opponents, on the other hand, got injured internally from the residual force and were vomiting out blood. DB Luaya, bring little Xing away. Light spoke to Yi Xiao and DB Luaya. Yes. DB Luaya immediately accepted the order and grabbed the little boy beside Liu Awa. Bring her along too. The little boy didn't forget his companion. He pointed to Liu Awa. Troublesome. Yi Xiao pouted when he saw the little girl from Little 4 mercenary team. However, he still grabbed Liu Awa and ran away with her. Damn it. Hades was furious when he saw Light and Dark Dragon taking their people right under their noses. He shouted, Stop them. 8 figures immediately dashed out of the ruins. They rushed towards the escaping Yi Shao and DB Luaya. Howl! Dark Dragon shouted. Balls of black air started to spurt out of his mouth and fly towards those people. Damn it! Ninja moved his body and came beside Dark Dragon. He wanted to stop what Dark Dragon was doing. Dark Dragon quickly pulled his hands away and a black dragon appeared in place. He moved his wrist and the black dragon moved to attack Ninja. Bang! Dark Dragon and Ninja collided. They were both Imperial Stage domain experts. But it was obvious that Dark Dragon was more powerful than him. While he was stopping the 8 domain realm masters, he still also managed to block Ninja's attack. Yi Shao and DB Luaya managed to rush past the 8 domain realm masters. Hades, who had started fighting with Light, shouted, "Frost Monarch, if you don't act now, all 3 of us will be embarrassed." Actually, if Dark and Light Dragon found them personally and talked to them, they might have agreed to give the little boy back to them. However now, Light and Dark Dragon destroyed 3 of their bases and even humiliated them in front of so many people. If they forgave them easily, the 3 of them would be laughed at by the people from the chaotic lands. Cough. Why do you have to do this? A cold voice floated over. Light and Dark Dragon's expressions changed. They dared to come because they felt that Frost Monarch wouldn't act. They might be wrong. Yi Shao and DB Luaya felt that their legs were stopped by something. Their expressions froze as they looked down on their legs. Their feet were covered with ice and the ice was slowly moving up their legs. The Frost Monarch had acted. Were they unable to save their young master even after Light and Dark Dragon came? Their faces turned pale. Hey, don't you know that you might hurt me too if you do this? A lazy voice sounded beside their ears. The 4 Imperial Stage domain experts were shocked when they heard the voice. Yi Shao looked at the direction where the voice came from and saw Zhang Hua sitting on a chair among the ruins smiling at them cheerfully. Chapter 993 Frost Monarch. Yi Shao saw Zhang Hua's feet were covered with ice too. He was sitting so the ice had already climbed up to his chest. He was going to become an ice statue soon, but Zhang Hua still had a smile on his face. He looked as though the ice on his body, which was about to take his life, was non-existent. A young person was on the edge of death but he didn't look frightened at all. There was obviously something wrong with the scene. Unless this fellow was either an idiot or a lunatic, this shouldn't be his reaction. However, he didn't look like a lunatic or an idiot. Dark Dragon was in deep thought. Light turned serious too. The expressions on Hades and Ninja couldn't be seen so no one knew what they were thinking. However, regardless of what was going through their minds, the ice was spreading up from Linglan's chest. Within a few seconds, it had reached Linglan's shoulder and was climbing up her neck. As the ice reached her jaws, Linglan raised one of her eyebrows and said lightly, "This is not good. If it continues moving up, I won't be able to talk." The ice that was moving up from her jaw suddenly got suppressed. No, they were moving back. They moved down Linglan's neck quickly like the tides in the sea. In a blink of an eye, there were no signs of ice left on Linglan's body. Not only that, the ice around Linglan was also starting to melt. Within the span of a few seconds, Yi Shao and DB Luaya were also freed from the ice. Light and Dark Dragon were surprised by this scene. Who was this young man? He was able to escape from an attack of an Imperial Stage domain expert. People as powerful as Light and Dark Dragon were able to sense a person's age from his vigor of life. Thus, they knew that Linglan was still very young. Tough. I haven't been out for many years so I didn't know that there is such a powerful youngster. An old man with white hair walked towards them from afar. He had a crystallized ice walking stick in one hand. He walked towards them slowly, but he seemingly reached them within just a few steps, a few meters in a single step. This was a technique only domain realm masters and above could understand. The old man raised his head, revealing a face full of wrinkles. He opened his eyes slightly and looked at everyone through his squinted eyes. Everyone suddenly felt a chill up their spines. Even Light and Dark Dragon couldn't help but shudder from the cold. Frost Monarch's understanding of the ice element seemed to have increased further over these years. Even without activating his domain, he was able to release his force of presence. Light and Dark Dragon had their guards up. They didn't forget that Frost Monarch was one of the three kings of the Chaotic Land, the most powerful one at that, as expected of the Frost Monarch. Ling Lan bowed respectfully. From his action just now, she knew that his understanding of the ice element was way above hers. This was enough to gain her respect. Cough cough. Everyone calls me Frost Monarch because they respect me. Actually, I don't have the right to be given this title. Frost Monarch coughed and shook his head. Frost Monarch is the title for the most powerful ice element master. You deserve this title, Ninja refuted. Light and Dark Dragons were enemies with Ninja, but they still agreed with what he said. You all put feathers on my cap. Actually, before I enter the Imperial stage through my physical skills, I shouldn't use names that indicate I'm a king. Frost Monarch didn't agree with what Ninja said. Hades felt a little awkward. By right, Hades meant the king of hell. However, Frost Monarch was right. A real king should be someone in the Imperial stage. However, Imperial stage was not so easy to enter. There were only 9 people who managed to break through to Imperial stage in the entire universe. As for them, they were known as Imperial stage domain experts, but in actual fact, they were just half a step into the Imperial stage. This half step was a huge difference. However, after meditating for more than 10 years, your understanding of your domain had reached new heights. It won't be long before you advance to the Imperial stage. Ninja was in envy. The more powerful a person becomes, the harder it gets for him to gain more understanding of his domain. He might even reach a bottleneck and never surpass himself ever again. Frost Monarch was already the most powerful among them. After he came out of his closed-door mediation, his force of presence had gotten stronger. It seemed that his meditation was effective. Frost Monarch sighed. It's not so easy. I don't know if I'm able to enter the Imperial stage when I'm alive. He looked at Ling Lan, who was listening to them quietly. This young man might advance to the Imperial stage faster than me. He should be the Frost Monarch, not me. From what Frost Monarch said, Ling Lan was an ice element domain realm master that was very close to Imperial stage 2. Light and Dark Dragons' expressions changed drastically when they heard this. They looked at Ling Lan with vigilance. They would place much importance in people who were as powerful as them while being much younger than them. Ninja and Hades turned to look at Ling Lan too. From their tightly clenched fist, everyone could tell that they were in great shock. Frost Monarch, you've spoken too highly of me. My understanding of the ice element is much less deep than yours, Ling Lan said honestly. This was the truth. She wasn't being humble. She was half-step to Imperial stage, but Frost Monarch's control of ice element was much more profound than her. She was still unable to release her domain energy unintentionally just by looking at people. This is embarrassing. I'm more than 100 years older than you. I've more time to understand the ice element. Frost Monarch said regretfully, I'm already half a step into the coffin. Yet, you're still young. You still have a long path ahead of yourself. Ling Lan smiled and didn't say anything. Whatever she said now would seem like boasting. She would feel bad if she boasted in front of a dying old man. Enough of my lamenting. Little brother, I apologize for hurting you just now. However, the rules of the Chaotic Lands must be obeyed. I hope that you'll not interfere with this matter. Frost Monarch didn't want to offend a future king. Plus, Ling Lan managed to melt his ice, proving that she was not much weaker than him. Plus, there were 2 half-step Imperial stage domain masters on their opponent's side. If Ling Lan entered the battle, the strength of both sides would be equal. This wasn't something Frost Monarch wanted to see. Chapter 994 Haggard. Light and Dark Dragons' expressions changed when they heard this. If Ling Lan really decided to watch from the side, they wouldn't be able to win against the 3 kings, especially with Frost Monarch there. With their strength, they were able to leave successfully if they were losing, but the people they brought with them would be in danger. They wouldn't be able to save who they wanted to save too. This would be a huge blow to the Rainbow Raiders' reputation. Their reputation might even drop, and they might even become the laughing stock of the mercenary world. Compared to Light and Dark Dragon, Yi Shao and DB Luia's expressions were strange. When Ling Lan started speaking, Little Awa cleverly kept her mouth shut. She remembered her father telling her that little children shouldn't interrupt talking adults during important times. She was afraid that if she shouted happily, she might cause more trouble for herself. Ling Lan gave a half-smile when she heard what Frost Monarch said. Her expression told Frost Monarch that things were not so simple. Light and Dark Dragon looked at each other in surprise. It looked like this Domain Realm Master who came suddenly wanted to interfere in this matter. Frost Monarch frowned slightly when he saw this. A cold aura exuded from his body. Little brother, is there anything you're unhappy about? Ling Lan smiled gently. Frost Monarch, there's one matter I would like to ask for your opinion about. If someone hurt my team member and then snatched someone else from my team again after that, what should I do as the leader of the team? Frost Monarch's expression darkened. Then, he glanced coldly at Hades before retracting his gaze and calmly replied, "It seems like your men accidentally entered our market. I'll ask someone to return your men unscathed to you." There's no need for that. The person I want to find is saved by the Rainbow Raiders. Ling Lan smiled. Liu Awa quickly lifted her hands off her mouth when she heard Ling Lan talking about her. She called Ling Lan excitedly. "It's me, Brother Zhonghua. I'm here." Ling Lan nodded at Yi Xiao. Then, she nodded at Light and Dark Dragon to express that she was grateful to them for what they did. Light and Dark Dragon heaved a sigh of relief and then gave a relaxed smile. They were really lucky. Now with Ling Lan on their side, they didn't have to be frightened of the three kings of the chaotic lands. Frost Monarch gripped his ice walking stick firmly and the ice walking stick suddenly made a low humming sound. His gaze turned cold. He persuaded Ling Lan nicely because he didn't want to create more trouble. It wasn't because he was afraid of her, but since the other party didn't want to let go of this matter, he wasn't afraid of fighting with Ling Lan too. Boom! The entire space started vibrating. Yi Xiao and DB Luaya almost got injured by the vibrations. The two children in their hands got knocked unconscious and blood was flowing down from their facial orifices. A huge and frightening ice mountain had appeared behind them. No, there were two ice mountains. Cold air oozed out of the ice mountains, turning the entire place misty from the cold. Even Domain Realm Masters like Yi Xiao and DB Luaya couldn't help but shiver from the cold. The two children in their hands were almost frozen. If they didn't get away from this place soon, the two children might freeze to death. Run as far away as you can. A familiar voice sounded beside Yi Xiao and DB Luaya's ears. It was Ling Lan. She had helped them to block Frost Monarch's lethal attack. The two people didn't dare to waste any time and quickly retreated with the children. The three kings couldn't stop them, as they had people in front of them who were of higher priority. However, as the underground kings of the chaotic lands, they had many subordinates under them. They ordered their subordinates to chase after the children. Ling Lan and the people on her side couldn't stop those people too. The three kings looked satisfied when they saw many Domain Realm Masters chasing after Yi Xiao and DB Luaya. Light and Dark Dragon were worried, but they quickly put down their worries, as their respective opponents, Hades and Ninja, had started attacking them. As for Ling Lan, she had already asked Little Four to inform her comrades to help Yi Xiao and DB Luaya after they finished their missions. Soon, only the 6 strongest Domain Realm Masters were left in this ruined auctionatrium. Ling Lan and Frost Monarch were fighting with each other by firing ice mountains in full alert. Both of them knew that each other was waiting for an opportunity to launch a lethal blow. Ling Lan's eyes were filled with excitement and fighting spirit. After advancing to the domain stage, this was the first time she met such a powerful opponent. Frost Monarch was half-step to Imperial stage. In terms of experience and understanding of their domain, he was better than her in both aspects. The collision of the ice mountains just now appeared as though they were of equal match, but in actual fact, Ling Lan was weaker. The old and weak-looking Frost Monarch didn't move a single step during their fight. On the other hand, Ling Lan had to take half a step back to prevent herself from getting hurt internally. This half step proved the difference of their power. I have always thought that I've reached a bottleneck, and as long as I overcome this bottleneck, I can advance to Imperial stage. However, I think that I might have underestimated the difficulty of achieving the Imperial stage. Ling Lan thought to herself. Frost Monarch has a deeper understanding of ice element, and yet he is still unable to break through to the Imperial stage. It looks like I have a long way ahead of myself. Ling Lan observed Frost Monarch's ice element domain carefully. Since their domains were the same, the things Ling Lan could learn from him were greater. The way he used his domain gave her new inspiration for her own. At this moment, Frost Monarch looked up and multiple ice needles appeared in the cold air. The ice needles shot towards Ling Lan. In response, Ling Lan clapped her hands together and ice walls were formed around her. Ice shards started flying everywhere when the ice needles stabbed into the ice walls, which resulted in cracks appearing on the ice walls. Ling Lan frowned as she heard the sound of something breaking. Her ice walls couldn't withstand the pressure from the ice needles and had collapsed, revealing a huge hole pierced ice needles where Ling Lan was standing moments ago. Not far away, a wisp of cold air congregated into a human figure. Ling Lan appeared there. When Ling Lan noticed that her ice walls were unable to withstand Frost Monarch's volley of ice needles, she instantly changed her body into ice particles and dispersed into the air. Then, she congregated in another area. This was the first time she appeared so haggard in a fight that she had no choice but to escape like this. Chapter 995 Disciple. At that moment, the cold air around Ling Lan suddenly froze, forming two ice dragons. Then, the ice dragons seemed to be infused with life force as it opened their maws and attempted to bite her. Ling Lan frowned when she felt the cold air beside her freezing. In response, two ice spikes appeared behind her and pierced the ice dragons that were rushing towards her. Suddenly, Ling Lan's chest got pierced by an ice blade from her back. An old and wrinkled face slowly appeared on the blade of the ice blade. Frost Monarch's face slowly formed in front of Ling Lan. On the spot where he used to be standing, there was just a melted ice statue. However, Ling Lan also turned into an ice statue the moment she got stabbed. When Frost Monarch realized what he pierced wasn't Ling Lan, his expression turned from one of satisfaction to one of seriousness, and an ice shield was quickly formed behind him. Bang! A sharp ice blade stabbed into the shield. Ling Lan's body appeared again. This time, however, she was behind Frost Monarch. Then, countless after-images was seen flying between the two. In a blink of an eye, the two of them had exchanged many blows. Cough. Frost Monarch's face turned slightly pale. The massive and continuous drain of his domain energy was a little too much for him to handle. I didn't expect you to be able to change between states easily. Frost Monarch was surprised. Between the three kings, he was the only one of the three who had managed to get a full grasp of all of the states of his element. Hades and Ninja still had some problems when changing the states of their element, as they still couldn't transition their states freely as him yet. The fact that they couldn't transition between their states freely wouldn't be noticeable to most people, but for powerful people like him, it was an obvious loophole. Many Imperial stage domain experts who came to the Chaotic Lands proudly were killed by him because he made use of this loophole. Thinking that this battle would just be a repeat of his previous battles against Imperial stage domain expert, he used the same tactic he used against many of his past opponents at Ling Lan. However, this time, he met a difficult opponent. Frost Monarch started to become serious now. He finally took Ling Lan as a real opponent now. I'm just curious, how did you discover my force of presence? Frost Monarch revealed his query. He had merged his force of presence with the cold air around him perfectly, leaving almost no traces behind. This was his domain technique. He was able to merge with his ice element seamlessly, which had allowed him to kill innumerable people in the past. No matter how perfect a disguise is, it's still a disguise. There will still be a difference. Ling Lan couldn't tell him that this was her innate talent that discovered him. She was able to see the danger with her profound insight, so she reacted accordingly. It had to be said that Ling Lan's profound insight allowed her to escape many dangers. It was her ultimate trump card during crucial moments. Unfortunately, profound insight was a naughty innate talent. Ling Lan had tried to understand her innate talent many times so that she could use it better, but profound insight never gave her a chance to understand it. Ling Lan didn't make herself clear, but Frost Monarch knew that his technique must have loopholes in it. This battle with you allowed me to gain a deeper understanding of the ice element. If you continue to exist, I might be able to enter the Imperial stage sooner than I expected. Unfortunately, in the Chaotic Lands, we never allow anyone who threatens our position to exist. Frost Monarch had a look of pity. Simultaneously, killing intent could be seen in his eyes. The more outstanding Ling Lan was, the more he wanted to kill her. Frost Monarch knew that if he didn't kill this young man today, he would become stronger than him in the future. He could learn a lot from this battle, but this young man in front of him could do so too. Because of his young age, his opponent might even benefit more than him. If Ling Lan was given more time, she would be able to catch up with Frost Monarch. Frost Monarch even suspected that his opponent had a higher chance of entering the Imperial stage than him. Such a threat must be removed as early as possible. Frost Monarch became merciless in his attacks once he decided to kill Ling Lan. Ling Lan felt the ice element around her getting out of control. Earlier in the fight, she already had this feeling. However, she managed to just resolve it. But this feeling came back even stronger. Ling Lan tried to control the ice elements, but the ice elements were rejecting her. She had lost control of the ice elements. Frost Monarch's wrinkled face turned hideous. An ice dragon quickly materialized around Ling Lan and moved to constrict her. Multiple ice needles also appeared in the air and shot towards Ling Lan, who couldn't move anymore. Ling Lan turned serious, as her ability to change into ice particles was sealed by her opponent. It was now impossible for her to escape by just changing into ice particles. This was the most dangerous situation she was in since the assassination at the Scout Academy. Ling Lan felt that she was very close to the doors of hell. This feeling was even stronger than the assassination at the Scout Academy. This is his goal from the start. Ling Lan finally understood how frightening Frost Monarch was. Now, she needed to think of a way to survive. Malicious intent quickly flashed past her eyes. Her spiritual power, which she had been restraining all these while, exploded. Heptashield. Although the ice element around her was controlled by her opponent, she was still able to retaliate back. The techniques from the Divine Command sect, which she had been hiding all these while, was finally revealed to the world. The strong spiritual power exuding off her caused the ice dragon that was tying her up to disperse almost immediately. The ice needles that were flying towards her dropped to the ground after hitting the heptashield. Some of the needles even bounced back towards Frost Monarch. In response, the Frost Monarch blew lightly in front of him. The needles that bounced back got blown to the ground. Ling Lan used her Divine Command Sect technique to counter Frost Monarch's technique. She thought that her opponent would continue attacking her, but he surprisingly didn't. He was just looking at her strangely. "I didn't know you are his disciple." Frost Monarch held his ice stick tightly. He seemed to be recalling some memories. "How is Mushui King?" Frost Monarch asked. Ling Lan raised her eyebrows. "You know my master, you're indeed his disciple." Frost Monarch appeared enlightened. "Well, he is the only person who can groom such an outstanding disciple like you." "Are you close to my master?" Frost Monarch sounded as though he was close to Mushui King. However, the sense of danger in Ling Lan's heart just grew stronger. She turned even more vigilant. Of course, we studied in the same Scout Academy and even sat next to each other." Frost Monarch seemed to be immersed in his memories. Frost Monarch was from the Federation too? But why would a powerful person like him come to the Chaotic Lands and become a king here? That year, that block of wood, nickname for Mushui King, told me that I'll stop at the Imperial stage if I continue my method of practicing. I didn't expect him to be right. Frost Monarch appeared frustrated. They had the same amount of potential in the past, but they chose different cultivation paths. In the end, Mushui King managed to enter God Realm and become one of the only two God Realm formidable warriors in the human universe. On the other hand, he got stuck as a titled Domain Realm formidable warrior for many years. Frost Monarch felt that he was a failure as he recalled his past. Chapter 996 Test. Bastard. Since he said that I'll stop at the Imperial stage, then why can't I advance to Imperial stage even after so many years? Frost Monarch's expression turned wild. He looked at Ling Lan with bloodshot eyes. He gritted his teeth and said, Mu Shui King is a god realm formidable warrior now. You managed to become half-step into Imperial stage at a young age because you know the secret of advancing to Imperial stage, right? Frost Monarch found an excuse for his failure. He lost to Mu Shui King not because Mu Shui King was stronger than him, it was because he knew a shortcut. Damn it, why didn't he tell me? Frost Monarch shouted angrily. He felt that he was fooled by Mu Shui King. Ling Lan took a step back cautiously when she saw Frost Monarch turning crazy. Luckily, the heptashield protected her seamlessly. Frost Monarch was really driven mad by his own thoughts. His mind was filled with murderous intent. Since you fooled me, don't blame me for being merciless. I'll destroy your disciple and end your legacy. Ha ha ha. Frost Monarch laughed crazily. His wrinkled face shook as he laughed. Amidst his crazy laughter, the sky suddenly turned dark. A wall of blue ice appeared above them and was getting thicker slowly. The thicker it got, the darker the color. The light that was able to shine through it got dimmer and dimmer too. Not only that, the same wall of ice appeared on the ground a few meters away. In an instant, Ling Lan and Frost Monarch were enclosed in an ice box. Only the ice element existed in this box. By right, an ice element domain realm master should love an enclosed space filled with ice elements. However, Ling Lan wasn't happy about this at all, as she was in grave danger. The ice element in this space couldn't be controlled by her. That meant that she was rejected by the ice element in this space. This is Frost Monarch's domain territory. This was the only explanation for this phenomenon. Not only was Ling Lan able to understand how it felt to be discriminated against by the ice element that had always adored her, but she also felt the drain on her spiritual power which was maintaining the heptashield. As the amount of spiritual power she used to maintain the heptashield for another second was double of what she used the second before, that meant that she would use more and more spiritual power as time passed by. It looked like this world discriminated against other forms of energy too. Ling Lan frowned. Her spiritual power was strong and ample, but it couldn't withstand such a depletion rate. If this continued on, her spiritual power would be exhausted in less than 10 minutes. Rather than waiting for her spiritual power to be depleted, she would take the risk. Ling Lan was a ruthless person, whether to herself or to other people. She let go of her heptashield and released all her spiritual power. Spiritual blast. Boom, 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 boom. Multiple explosions occurred in the icebox. The spiritual blast impacted the domain territory heavily. PFFT. Ling Lan and Frost Monarch vomited out blood simultaneously. Their faces went pale too. Ling Lan used her spiritual blast to hurt Frost Monarch. However, she received a backlash too. Frost Monarch's icebox was unable to withstand the force from all the spiritual blast, so the remaining damage was sustained by Frost Monarch. This is your trump card? Blood kept dripping down the corner of his mouth, showing that he was injured heavily. Mu Shui King's disciple is only capable of this. He suddenly straightened his hunched back. He waved his ice walking stick and shouted, "Die!" His face had turned hideous from his anger. 6 walls of ice quickly formed all around Ling Lan. They started closing in on her from 6 different directions. Ling Lan wanted to move, but she realized that she couldn't. She could only watch as the 6 ice walls moved towards her and trapped her inside. There seemed to be an unlimited amount of ice particles in this place. The walls of ice around Ling Lan got thicker. She was successfully trapped inside. Ling Lan felt that it was getting harder to breathe. She never felt cold before, but now she felt the coldness seeping into her skin. It reached into her bones. She never expected herself to die by the ice element. For some reason, Ling Lan didn't think about how to survive. She was just astounded that she was trapped by her own element. Boss, stop wasting time. Think about your other innate talent. Little Four stomped his foot anxiously. The moment he finished speaking, he suddenly fell backwards and disappeared from Ling Lan's mindscape. Little Four appeared on top of a mountain. He lowered his head and twirled his fingers helplessly. Sob, can I leave this place? I don't want to face that scary instructor. Unfortunately, Little Four's wish was not fulfilled. He was the virtual god and the owner of the main chip that made up this space, but there were still people he was afraid of. Ling Lan was one of them, but the person Little Four was most afraid of was Number One. In front of Number One, Little Four's naughty brain would turn off automatically and become very obedient. "What did you promise?" Number One looked at him and asked calmly. "I won't interfere with boss's evolution." Little Four lowered his head and replied, "How many times did you break this promise?" Number One continued asking. Little Four thought carefully and cautiously raised one finger. He said in a soft voice, "Once." Number One continued to look at him coldly. Little Four quickly raised another finger. "Twice." When he saw Number One still glaring at him, he lifted the third finger and said dejectedly, "Since I was wrong, it must be 3 times. Number One lowered his gaze and answered indifferently, "Your memory is not bad after all." Little Four heaved a sigh of relief after Number One stopped glaring at him. Sob, who said that boss's aura can freeze people to death. Compared to Number One, Boss was as warm as the sun in spring. For the sake of Ling Lan, don't interfere with her evolution next time. She needed to move forward on her own. Number One waved his hand after he finished speaking. Little Four flew out of Number One's space and got locked up in a little black room. "You'll be confined for 3 hours." A cold voice sounded beside Little Four's ears. Little Four's reminder to Ling Lan caught Number One's attention, so he decided to lock Little Four up for the time being. "Ah, let me out. Boss is in danger." Little Four, who was very obedient all these while, turned agitated. He started slapping the walls around him. "This is a test for her. None of us can help her." Number One's voice was heard again. After that, no matter how much fuss Little Four kicked up, no one answered him. Chapter 997. Another innate talent? A second innate talent? In the real world, Little Four was prompted by Ling Lan and she began to think about this deeply. Her other innate talent was profound insight and could be used to alert her of dangers. It could also see flaws in a technique and could even help predetermine attacks. However, now, her profound insight didn't react at all. Could it be that the Frost Monarch was close to becoming an Imperial stage domain expert, which made her profound insight useless on him? Or perhaps she had never actually used her profound insight to its full potential and that was why she couldn't discover anything with it. Ling Lan opened her eyes and thought of a way of getting out of this dire situation. A cool blue color suddenly entered her eyes, but it blocked her vision. "Can I not see anymore? Am I too late?" The icebox was filled with the Frost Monarch's ice element domain energy. The ice element that did not belong to Ling Lan instantly invaded her eyes and wounded them. Ling Lan could only feel a sharp pain in her eyes. Now, she was even seeing a blood-red liquid dripping down from the top of her vision. In all the redness, Ling Lan seemed to see a silhouette move about. She was overjoyed that she could finally see something and she quickly directed all of her domain energy towards her eyes. Finally, the fogginess that had blocked her vision finally began to clear up. But what she saw wasn't what she expected. Ling Lan saw herself drawing her last breath in third person as if she was an audience to the scene in front of her. She also saw the Frost Monarch laughing maniacally next to her body. She then saw Light and Dark Dragon escaping from the auction hall. She then saw her comrades rushing towards Frost Monarch and the other 2 king after seeing her dead. They were unsurprisingly all blown back in one attack and in the end, all perished. No. There were a few who managed to get away with their lives, the beautiful Luo Lang and Luo Zhao, along with the elegant Li Lan. Their overwhelming beauty allowed them escape with their lives. However, they faced a fate much worse than death, as they were tragically used as slaves by those 3 people. Not able to withstand being shamed, Luo Zhao committed suicide in the end. Luo Lang attempted to take the life of the person who shamed him, but failed and was killed instead. Li Lan, on the other hand, endured the shame and embarrassment and survived. In the end, he successfully killed all of his enemies by plotting against them in the far future, helping avenge the death of his comrades. Then, Li Lan became a marshal who controlled 3 divisions and caused great bloodshed in the human universe. Is this the result of her death? Ling Lan felt her heart was being ruthlessly battered by someone. causing her to be in great pain. In a battle of life or death, she was not as strong as the other person, so she didn't regret dying. However, she definitely couldn't accept that after she dies, her comrades would all perish. Their endings were either be shamed, humiliated, die a brutal death, or live tragically. None of them were able to live a good life after her death. I can't die. This thought appeared in Ling Lan's mind. Who cares if the ice element doesn't listen to my command? I, Ling Lan, never had only one way to control my element up in my sleeves. Perhaps it was because her eyes had felt Ling Lan's strong will to continue living. The images that appeared before her vanished in an instant. This time, Ling Lan just saw countless ice particles in front of her. Normally, her ice element would let Ling Lan feel grouped ice particles. She wouldn't be able to see them individually and could only use her domain energy to condense them together. This time, however, she could see the ice particles. They were actually filled with emotions. There was suspicion, rejection, doubt, joy, and even those that wanted to get close to her. However, the ice particles that wanted to get close to her were heartlessly sent back by a foreign domain energy. Ling Lan seemed to be able to hear the cries of agony of the ice element and feel their pain. She could even feel their desire of wanting to return to her. That's my own ice particles. Ling Lan had a sudden realization. Her ice particles was still in this space and was only blocked off by the Frost Monarch's stronger domain energy. Ling Lan would, of course, not just sit around, since she knew those ice particles were her own. She released her domain energy and got closer to those ice particles that were being friendly and had good feelings towards her. Bam, bam. After feeling that another domain energy approaching, the Frost Monarch's domain energy began to surround Ling Lan's domain energy. His domain energy didn't allow the ice particles that belonged to her to get close to her. Ugh! Ling Lan, who was originally already at her limit, was wounded again by another attack from Frost Monarch, who was just looking at the scene in front of him, and she could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood from the attack. Damn domain energy! Leave me alone! Ling Lan shouted in her mind. She wanted the domain energy that was blocking her to completely disappear. Refusal, disappear, or disintegrate? Suddenly, three choices appeared inside Ling Lan's mind. Ling Lan stared blankly for a moment, but immediately realized something. This was the domain of her evolving profound insight. Her choice would determine the direction her profound insight domain would evolve into. What should I choose? Ling Lan couldn't make a decision. Since she didn't know, then she should pick what she needed the most right at this moment. Refusal was probably to reject the opponent's domain energy and create a space where she could protect herself. Disappear was probably to cause her opponent's domain energy to disappear and let her gain back control of the ice element. Then what was disintegrate? Was it to disintegrate the opponent's domain? By categorizing the choices in that way, disappear and disintegrate had similar results. However, since they were different choices, then the outcome should still have some differences. As for refusal, Ling Lan's intuition told her that it wasn't enough to satisfy her wish, so she tossed this option aside. In the end, her options were either disappear or disintegrate. Just looking at the name, disappear seemed stronger, but Ling Lan was a realistic person, so she chose disintegrate. When Ling Lan had made her decision, she saw the icebox that sealed her slowly melted around her. The Frost Monarch's domain was being disintegrated. Disintegrate was as expected the meaning of the word. It could completely disintegrate any domain that was forced on her by her opponents. The Frost Monarch, who was proudly waiting for Ling Lan to breathe her last breath within the icebox, suddenly, he felt that he was no longer in control of his domain. Then, he saw that large icebox around him was beginning to melt with the water flowing out uncontrollably. That's not possible. This was in his domain and only he had his energy within it. His opponent's domain energy was already suppressed by him, so it shouldn't be able to appear in it. However, even with his doubts, the ice coffin still continued to melt around him. Then, he looked at the standing Ling Lan, whose face was facing towards the floor. Ling Lan's eyes suddenly opened and killing intent flashed within her eyes. Frost Monarch's domain began to crumble. The ice walls in the sky, on the ground, front, back, left and right side all cracked up, fell to the ground and melted, taking all of the energy that did not belong to me. The innate talent Profound Insight was, as expected, one of the best talents in the history of the human race. Ling Lan landed on the ground slowly with her black windbreaker slowly flowing in the wind. Frost Monarch, I've already seen your ultimate technique. Now, it's only fair you see mine as well, Ling Lan said calmly as she raised her hands and held them at her chest. Right as she finished speaking, Ling Lan's hands clasped together and countless ice pillars were erected from the ground around them. At the same time, a string-like sound began to ring in the space. There was also a sharp screeching noise as though there was someone pulling the string on an instrument forcefully. Chapter 998 Kill Them All. Frost Monarch's facial expression seemed stiff. That was because he saw the space around him was being aligned with countless ice fibers crisscrossing all over each other, creating a seemingly inescapable area. What worried Frost Monarch most was that his domain could no longer appear in this area, meaning that he wouldn't be able to use his domain to protect himself. If he had used his overpowering domain against Ling Lan and completely restricted Ling Lan's domain in the very beginning, then he wouldn't have been in this situation. The person who had control would not have been Ling Lan, but him instead. Frost Monarch felt that something would go terribly wrong if he continued to stay within the area. He instantly turned himself ice particles with the intention of wanting to leave the area that gave him an ominous feeling to his very core. When ice particles congregated back into his body, he was stunned to discover that he was still in the area with the ice slivers. He couldn't even get away after turning his body's state. How was that possible? It should be known that he actually didn't even feel like he was captured. Although his domain could no longer appear, his domain energy from within his body was not hindered at all. Ling Lan smirked when she saw Frost Monarch become dumbfounded by situation. She was the only one who knew why he was in that situation. It was because her Profound Insight domain had already wrapped around the entire ice domain. In other words, his domain energy that was seemingly able to go out of his body was enveloped by an even stronger domain energy. Ling Lan's domain could completely disintegrate domains, elements, and energies that did not belong to Ling Lan in the area. Thus, no matter how many times the Frost Monarch tried to will the ice particles to escape, he wouldn't be able to escape from the Profound Insight domain. Not only that, the disintegration domain energy of the Profound Insight domain would also slowly seep into the Frost Monarch's body. By then, even if he wanted to change into ice particles, he wouldn't be able to do that anymore unless he successfully escaped her domain. However, was that even possible? Ling Lan smirked and a breeze of chilly wind slowly blew past her. Ever since she saw the future after her death, she didn't want these three kings to continue on living. Kill them all. Ling Lan's facial expression was calm but her eyes betrayed her, as they were burning with flames of anger. She reached out her hand to the sky and then clenched together as she brought it down. Innumerable ice slivers inched towards Frost Monarch from all directions with each movement creating a screeching noise. In the beginning of the fight, Frost Monarch had sealed Ling Lan in an ice box, so Ling Lan now was repaying her debt. She used the ice slivers to create nets, then casting them one after another at Frost Monarch. SHT. Break. The nets wrapped around Frost Monarch's body tightly and slowly dug into his flesh, causing immense pain for Frost Monarch. In an attempt to break free from the nets, he furiously tried to move his body but the nets just dug deeper into his flesh with each struggle. However, the seemingly thin nets made of ice slivers were oddly strong. Although the Frost Monarch had broken off many of them, the speed at which he broke them was not as fast as the speed of the nets were covering his entire body. AHH. In the end, only a scream of agony was heard from Frost Monarch. Ugh! A puddle of blood appeared on the ground of the ice sliver area. The Frost Monarch, who stood at the top of the chaotic lands, had disappeared from this world just like that. Ling Lan slowly restrained her killing intent. She then looked at the puddle of blood and said calmly, "You understood the words of Master wrongly. Master said you never had the chance to become an Imperial. Not that you can only become an Imperial." After saying that, She softly flicked her index finger and the ice slivers all around her turned back into ice particles. They glistened in the light before disappearing into the air. Ling Lan now finally had a chance to look towards Hades and Ninja, who were fighting with Light and Dark Dragon. She discovered that the four of them had stopped their battle and were all looking at her with fear in their eyes. Ling Lan just sent a glare towards them. Light and Dark Dragon both had scared expression on their faces. Hades and Ninja, on the other hand, just looked at each other with terrified expression on their faces. Then, the two of them decisively went towards two opposite directions and ran off. A person who could take out the Frost Monarch was definitely not an opponent they could defeat. In addition, Light and Dark Dragon were there too, watching them closely. If they were to stay and fight, they would most definitely die there. Hades and Ninja weren't idiots. They didn't want to die there like Frost Monarch had. "You want to leave? Come down here." Seeing Hades was planning on running away, Ling Lan put out her right hand and reached out to grab him. An ice dragon was shot out her hand and bit into the leg of Hades. Hades was a decisive individual, as he decisively used his hand as a sword to cut off his own leg and quickly escaped, before disappearing from Ling Lan's vision. SHT, they actually got away. Light and Dark Dragon were too slow. Ling Lan actually managed to grab onto Hades, but they two of them could only watch as Ninja escaped and didn't try to intercept him. Seeing that Hades was so ruthless to himself, Ling Lan frowned. It should be known that she had ordered her comrades to destroy many of the bases that belonged to Hades. If Hades was to escape, then he would become a huge problem in the future. Little 4. Ling Lan called out to Little 4 in her mindscape. Number 1, who had been watching Ling Lan's battle this whole time, heard Ling Lan's call and flicked his finger. He flicked Little 4, who was in the little black room, back into Ling Lan's mindscape. Seeing Little 4 hold his head with the eager expression of wanting to tell Ling Lan what he had done to him, Number 1's thousand-year icy cold expression actually warmed up a bit and there was just the slightest hint of a smile on his face. Didn't think that Ling Lan would actually manage to wield the most difficult evolution of Profound Insight, Future Sight. She also chose the corresponding domain to evolve. Now, her growth is something that even I cannot predict. Ling Lan, just how many surprises do you plan on giving me? Number 1 had a satisfied expression on his face as he closed his eyes once again. In actuality, if Ling Lan did not acquire the domain from her Profound Insight during her last moments, Number 1 wouldn't actually let Ling Lan be killed by Frost Monarch. If she had actually reached the point where she would die, Number 1 would take over her body and make a move himself. After all, Ling Lan was his most prized disciple. How could a teacher watch on coldly as his disciple dies in front of him? Thus, from the very beginning, Little 4's fear and worry was all for nothing. However, Number 1 would never tell that to Little 4. Yi Shao and DB Luaya took Qiaoxing and Liu Ewa and ran like madmen. They knew that if the 8 domain realm masters were to catch up to them, they would definitely die a gruesome death. Qiaoxing and Liu Ewa also knew that they were in a very dangerous moment, so they both laid on the shoulders of the other two, not daring to move or make a sound. They were afraid that they would affect Yi Shao and DB Luaya's escape if they disturbed them with their noises. However, no matter how fast they were running, how could they compare to the people who were chasing them without any excess baggage? Suddenly, a fireball and an earth spike simultaneously reached them from the air and ground respectively. Yi Shao and DB Luaya felt danger approaching, so they could only give up on moving forward and dashed towards the side. Bam, bam. The two attacks missed, but they were also now surrounded by 8 domain realm masters who had caught up to them. Haha, keep running, go on. One of the more effeminate middle-aged men out of the group put out his hands in a feminine manner and smirked. It was indeed one of the first domain realm masters who had intercepted Yi Shao and DB Luaya at the beginning. Yi Shao and DB Luaya's expressions showed extreme anxiousness. They looked towards the direction they ran from and hoped that they would be able to see the silhouettes of Light and Dark Dragon. However, even after almost spraining their necks, they still couldn't see anything. Chapter 999 Hide. Stop looking. Those two bastards won't be able to defeat Hades and Ninja. Plus, with Frost Monarch making a move, There will be no chance for them to come and save you. Anyone that dares to come and mess around in our territory will be killed, no exceptions." A man in black smiled arrogantly as he said, "Give up, no one can save you." The other Domain Realm Masters rubbed their hands in excitement and anticipation. They loved the feeling of tearing flesh apart with their bare hands. Yi Xiao, DB Luaya, and Qiao Xing gave looks of despair. Only Liu Awa appeared puzzled as she looked at a certain direction. "Uncle Liu." Liu Awa's innate talent is pretty powerful. She even managed to notice us. A lazy voice sounded from the side. Everyone looked towards the direction of the sound in surprise. 6 people had appeared without their realization. They all wore black windbreakers with metal masks covering their faces. Some were sitting while others were standing or squatting as they looked at them in a relaxed manner. "Little 4 mercenary team." Yi Xiao exclaimed in surprise. They didn't expect the members of the Little 4 mercenary team to be here too. However, their opponents were Domain Realm Masters. Weren't these people afraid of death? They were only at refinement or Qijin stage. No, wait. Yi Xiao and DB Luaya remembered Zhang Hua's display of his strength back in the auction hall. Then, they looked at how calm the members of the Little 4 mercenary team were, and they seemed to have understood something. These people who just showed up were the members of the Little 4 mercenary team who had just completed their mission. But where is the pet? Well, the pet had to protect the old and weak, so it stayed behind at the main base. Well, the truth was, Little White was hungry, so it went back to the base to eat. Liu Furong cupped his hands and bowed towards Yi Xiao after he recognized them. "Thank you for saving my daughter." Ling Lan wasn't here, so everyone recognized Liu Furong as the leader of this rescue mission. His daughter got implicated in this matter, so he became their spokesman. This was when Yi Xiao knew that the little girl he was carrying was the daughter of this middle-aged man. He waved his hands hurriedly. "It is our honor. Please, there's no need to thank me. If it wasn't for their leader, he wouldn't be able to escape from the auction hall too. My little girl is too naughty. It's my fault. I didn't teach her properly." Liu Furong turned and glared at Liu Awa. "Little Awa, do you know your mistake?" Liu Awa looked at her father. She was finally able to relax now. The tears that she had been withholding fell down and she finally cried loudly. Sob. "I know my mistake, Daddy." If she didn't leave the big brother's protection, she wouldn't have been abducted. Liu Awa endured much suffering this time, so she finally understood that if she didn't have the power to protect herself, she couldn't do whatever she wanted. Hence, the thought of becoming stronger was deeply imprinted in her heart. From this moment, little Awa had stepped on the path of becoming a powerful warrior. Ziyi, who was sitting on a crate, consoled Liu Awa when he saw how sad she was. "It's fine. Everything is fine now." He turned to look at Liu Furong and spoke up for Liu Awa. "You can't blame her too much. If those people didn't have evil intentions, this wouldn't have happened in the first place." "That's not true." Liu Furong shook his head. "The Chaotic Lands is a place full of crimes and havoc. How can we let down outguards here? A mistake is a mistake. There's no excuse for it. Just like how they let down their guards when they came here. They made a mistake too." They couldn't push the blame. Everyone understood what Liu Furong's words meant, so they turned quiet. "Who are you?" The leader of the group of Domain Realm Masters was furious when he saw the members from the Little 4 mercenary team talking among themselves as though they were non-existent. "Us?" Qilong looked up and said seriously, "We are here to kill you." Since they knew that these were the people who abducted little Awa, they must follow boss's order and kill all of them. Ha ha ha. The leader of the group of Domain Realm Masters was so angry that he started laughing. Insolent bunch of youngsters. His face turned cold. "In that case, die." The instant he finished speaking, all the Domain Realm Masters released their domain energy and rushed towards Qilong and others. Qilong's words had provoked them. Because of this, they ignored their target, Yi Xiao and DB Luaya. Yi Xiao and DB Luaya quickly threw Liu Awa and Qiao Xing towards Liu Furong before they rushed forward and attacked the 2 Domain Realm Masters who were charging at Liu Furong. No matter what, they came here to help them. In such moments of danger, they couldn't leave them alone and run away. Plus, They didn't really trust the abilities of the members from the Little Four mercenary team. Even if they had a high chance of dying, they would rather fight with their enemies themselves than to let the Little Four mercenary die while trying to save them. They only hoped that the oldest person in the team, who was the father of the little girl, would grab the opportunity they created and leave with the little girl and their young master. As long as their young master was able to escape, they were willing to die here. Yi Xiao and DB Luaya were prepared to die with their pursuers. Liu Furong saw Yi Xiao and DB Luaya throwing the children at him, so he quickly waved his hands in the air and multiple green vines shot out, forming two huge nets in the air. The two children landed in the nets safely. After that, plants spurted up from the ground and pushed the nets behind Liu Furong, away from the center of the fight. Liu Furong wasn't the only one who activated his domain. The other 5 members activated their domains too. The 8 domain realm masters who rushed towards them were shocked, but they immediately calmed down afterwards. Yi Xiao and DB Luaya were stunned too. They thought that they had hidden their true powers well, but they didn't expect the people from Little Four mercenary team to be even better at them in terms of disguise. There were 6 domain realm masters in their teams. Even an S-grade mercenary team wouldn't have such a powerful team. They couldn't help but suspect that the Little Four mercenary team was an SSS grade team in disguise. However, they remembered the information they got from President Tu and knew that the Little Four mercenary team was really a newly formed mercenary team. Yi Xiao and DB Luaya felt dizzy. If they weren't fighting, they would have grabbed a member and questioned him about their real identity. All in all, the presence of the Little Four mercenary team didn't make sense at all. Chapter 1000 Condition. It had to be said that under the harsh training from Ling Lan, the domain realm masters in Little Four mercenary team were more powerful than the average domain realm masters. Besides Zhao Jun, who was new to the domain stage, the other 5 people finished off their opponents in no time. Liu Furong controlled his plants and sucked out all the life force from his opponents. His opponents became green men with plants growing all around their bodies. He thought that he was the fastest to finish off his opponents, but when he retracted his domain, he realized that Li Lan, Luo Lang, Qi Long, and Ziyi had already ended their battle and were watching Zhao Jun's first match using his domain. They were pointing at him and discussing something. Liu Aihua and Qiao Xing sat obediently on the sidelines. Liu Aihua was completely relaxed now. When she noticed that her father had finished his fight, she waved at him happily. Qiao Xing, on the other hand, appeared tense. However, he was much calmer than before. He would look at Qilong and others occasionally with admiration and puzzlement. Liu Furong came beside Liu Aihua and patted her head lovingly. Then, he looked at everyone and asked, "How is Zhao Jun doing?" "Not bad, but he made some low-level mistakes." Ziyi smiled and replied, "You sound as though you never made mistakes during your first fight." Luo Lang rolled his eyes at Ziyi. This was a scene that all of them had participated in before. However, their first opponents were at the pseudo-domain stage and boss was beside them, so they didn't need to be as stressed as Zhao Jun. They were able to get the hang of their domains without worry and even managed to find their first domain technique. If he can't find his domain technique, Zhao Jun will have a really stalled-out fight. Qilong saw how much pressure Zhao Jun was under, so he was worried for him. However, he spent quite a while at the Qijin stage, so it shouldn't take him too long to find his technique. Li Lan was confident in Zhao Jun. The 4 people were watching at the side, but their domains were all activated. If it ever came to a time when Zhao Jun couldn't handle his opponent, they would step in and help him. Liu Furong felt sad when he saw how hard Zhao Jun was fighting while enduring so many hits to his body and face. He remembered the time when he first used his domain energy in a fight. Although his regiment commander was right beside him, It was safe to say that fight was one of the most dangerous fights he took part in. He was almost killed by his opponent and was tortured until he was half dead, but his regiment commander still didn't do anything to help him. He just stood at the side and watched him heartlessly. Yi Xiao finally killed his opponent after reaching his limits, so his domain collapsed the instant he finished his battle. He sat on the ground and panted heavily. If his opponent's domain was just a little more powerful, he would have lost this match. He looked at his side and DB Luaya was still fighting. Yi Xiao's element was metal, so his offensive power was greater than his opponent whose element was water. Hence, he finished his fight quicker than DB Luaya. DB Luaya, however, was quite unlucky. He met an earth element domain realm master whose defenses were strong and unrelenting, resulting in a battle of attrition. The person who would win would be the one who was able to last longer. Yi Xiao wanted to check up on the conditions of the members from the Little Four mercenary team, but he just saw 5 of them standing at the side and chatting among themselves casually. They didn't seem tired at all. Yi Xiao was astounded. He exhausted all his energy just to barely defeat his opponent. DB Luaya was probably in the same situation as him. He didn't believe that they somehow managed to face the 2 most powerful domain realm masters among this bunch of domain realm master. The only explanation was, these people in front of him chatting were much more powerful than DB Luaya and him. These were a bunch of titled domain realm formidable warriors. As their leader, Zhang Hua, if he dared to stay back to fight Frost Monarch, it meant that he was near the Imperial stage, right? Imperial stage domain expert. There were only 9 people who had managed to advance to the Imperial stage in the human world. Of course, there might be some powerful people who hid their identities. Was Zhang Hua going to join them soon? Yi Xiao started to respect the young Zhang Hua. At this moment, Ling Lan had asked Little Four to find where Hades and Ninja were hiding. She then told Light and Dark Dragon where Ninja was and took off to look for Hades herself. Compared to Ninja, Hades was more of a threat to their mercenary team. Hence, Ling Lan chose him as her target. The moment Hades returned to his base, the base was already in a mess. He grabbed one of his subordinates and asked fiercely, "What happened here, Hades?" There was a rumor going about saying that Frost Monarch is dead, so everyone is running away, his subordinate said anxiously. Damn it. Hades got hurt by Ling Lan, so he was burning with anger already. When he heard what this person said, his anger exploded and he squeezed the person to death. The person didn't even have the time to scream before he died. How dare you betray me? Die. Hades got enraged when he saw his subordinates running away. He lost his senses and started wantonly killing his subordinates. Suddenly, he felt something and his expression changed to one of fear. The crazy killing intent quickly disappeared. He couldn't care less about his subordinates anymore as he quickly rushed into the depth of his base. Ling Lan landed on the place where Hades was at just moments ago. She saw the sea of blood left behind by Hades and frowned. She then chased after Hades without hesitation. She mustn't let such a crazy person escape, as he would be a huge threat to her in the future. Hades escaped into the depth of his base. After that, he activated the defensive system of his base before feeling more relaxed. He took a deep breath and calmed himself down. Then, he entered the hall in front of him. There were 3 people sitting in the hall. One of them was a young man with an earnest smile. There was also an elder with black hair and a youthful face. Lastly, there was a muscular man with radiant skin. Hades flew into the hall and sat on the host's seat. He looked at the 3 people in the hall and said, "I agree to your proposal. However, there is one condition. You must help me to kill the person who is chasing me." The young man smiled and shook his head. "Hades, times are different now. What we said before is not relevant now." He looked at Hades's chopped leg. "You." Hades was indignant. These people were taking advantage of his plight. However, he thought of Ling Lan and controlled his anger. Without Frost Monarch, he needed these 3 people's help if he wanted to kill Ling Lan. "What is your criteria then?" "Where there is life there is hope." Hades took a deep breath before asking. "Hades' palace will merge with Soul Society unconditionally," the young man said calmly. "Damn it." Hades slammed his hands on the coffee table beside him and the coffee table shattered into pieces.